in the submarine service, and the last 5 in was kind of staff, and then he spent another 20, little yeah, about 20-ish, and he just
in the
hired.
submarine
Yes.
service. And
Oh, I hear feedback there, Kim. Somebody.
No,
Hello?
that's
Well, it's a tough life. I admire the hell out of them. I'll tell you. My dealings with the Navy has been with the surface Navy, and I shot the cruiser Boston in Vietnam, 8-inch guns, and I fired them, from the air, and they don't even have 8-inch guns on Navy ships anymore.
Yeah. So
Visited the battleship New Jersey. Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah. So anyways, yeah, so my godson is he's making his decision in the next few weeks. I think he has till May 1st or April 30th, whatever, to make his decision. And yeah, it's really nice because the West Point sends this nice, almost like a graduation folder that's really like a nice leather a folder that has his appointment, and has a nice letter from the lieutenant general. He did the service. He did the 2-week service in last summer at West Point,
Yeah.
and then he did the naval one also, and then he did the Air Force one. So he did all
yeah.
3 last summer.
Everybody wants him. What's his specialty?
Well, you mean like what does he want to major in college? Yeah, he wants to major in either mechanical engineering or in nuclear engineering. That's his sort of his interest. And and he's a competitive swimmer also,
I'll be
so
back.
Yeah.
he
He's
you know
a, oh, did he get a sports scholarship, or you think that's part of it?
well, there's no scholarships for sports at the academies because the academy is free. But he applied to other schools like University of Texas, which he got into, Georgia Tech, Berkeley, UCLA, and he would, if he went to those, he would do ROTC, and he would also swim for those teams. So
So his family is also military.
not at all, not at all. No,
No,
no, not at all. No, nothing to do with it. Yeah, no,
he's
they're
an
in the
apple that fell far from the tree, huh?
Well, I mean, it's just regular life. I mean, no, he's Indian American. His first generation born here, and his parents are from India, and I've known them for 25 years. So I've worked with his dad for forever, and I knew them before, or I knew them right when they were getting married, actually. So I worked with him and met
So
his.
was your life different? Like you did 5 years and then 15 years in the National Guard, right?
Yeah.
The
So what?
National Guard is like what, 1 month a year or something like that.
Well, it
Oh
depends
no,
on
they're a
the
little more than
unit.
that.
It
They're more
depends
than
on the
that.
it depends on the unit that you're in, but generally speaking, well, especially I was an NCO, so I was enlisted. So generally speaking, you'll have a weekend a month, a 2-week a training cycle in the summer. But when you're a more senior NCO, you'll go in during the weeks. You'll do it in the evening and do the planning actions for that weekend. So when you're troop, like I was in the cavalry, we call companies troops, and we call battalions squadrons. And so when your troop and your squadron are doing your training rotation, or whatever you're doing, your certifications, whatever it might be, then so you're putting that extra time in, which counts. So you get points for that. But basically, you spend, let's say realistically, you want to think of it as spending like 3.5 days a month, and then the equivalent of, let's say, 3 weeks. In the summer, that's probably like the safe way to look at it. So think of it as something like of about 5 days a month. That would be like across the whole year. That would be like a
Well,
good.
well, I worked with the National Guard in the 101st Airborne Division in Vietnam, and we had a number of National Guard units there.
Sure.
And I worked pretty close with the artillery units. And they fired on Hamburger Hill for us. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hamburger
Yeah, of
Hill.
course.
But they had 155 self-propelled, and they fired on Hamburger Hill for us. And of course, we had all the DeVarty and the 101st doing it. And we fired 21,000 rounds in 10 days,
Yeah.
and we got them. We got them good, but you know how the war turned out overall. So
Yeah. So anyways, I mean, so Ken, that's sort of the the effort that you wind up putting in is somewhere around an average of, let's say, 4 to 6 days a month. When you're more in a more senior role in your troop or in your squadron. And when you're in a more junior role, which I wasn't in a junior role by the time I went to the National. So I started the National Guard in high school, my senior year, and was in it in college. And then when I went on active duty, after 5+ years on active duty, I came back to the National Guard. And then basically at that point, I was a mid, almost senior NCO, and became a senior NCO while I was in the National Guard.
Well,
the
I know your
National
background.
Guard is a good way to go. It is a very good way to go. Yes, it is. We work with them pretty close up here where I am in Washington State.
Yep. And I spent 5.5 years on active duty. So I was stationed in Germany, I was stationed in Turkey, and I was stationed in Saudi Arabia.
Where were you in Turkey?
I was in Incirlik, so which is in southern Turkey by the Syrian Iraqi border.
Yeah, I know where that is. But when I was in Germany, we had some nuclear warhead detachments in Turkey. That was classified then. It's not classified now. But
Yeah.
we had nuclear warheads in Turkey, and I was in a unit that did that. Yeah.
So anyways, so I was in a troop that was so the cavalry. Then it's different now. There's really not cavalry anymore. They're trying to relaunch some of the cavalry on active duty, but most of the cavalry is in the National Guard. But they're trying to kind of reinstantiate it. Going into the 2000s, kind of when I was getting out in the 2000s, we moved to this different model, which was all about independent action brigades. And so a lot of our older approaches, our doctrine, which was built around divisions, was, let's say, scaled down. And then now we're building back up to divisions and corps. So we're bringing back some of those older, not older in a bad way, but just the doctrine we had prior to that in the 80s and 90s. So I was in during the doctrines that started in the late 80s through the 90s, when we reorganized the regimental system. And in the cavalry, there's a lot of different squadrons. So the squadron I was mostly in for maybe half to 2/3 of the time was then called a RESTA squadron, which is RSTA, which is reconnaissance, surveillance, target acquisition. So basically, you're the scanning and screening force for the rest of your armored cav, and then the armored cavalry is the screening force for your armored division, which is your basically your blunt force instrument for the corps. And so that's like, think of it as like a stack.
You're giving a class in military art. Did you ever go to Fort Leavenworth?
Yeah. I went to Fort Leavenworth.
Well, that's what they teach us at Fort Leavenworth and other places. Yeah.
So I was just
you're
explaining
giving us that, and that's good stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'm just explaining it to Ken because
Yeah.
know that.
So
Well, I don't know how much civilians know about the Army. I really don't.
Yes.
Some do and some don't.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm just kind of giving you that kind of background. So
Well, I know your background is technical. You have obviously you're working with computers now.
yeah. So then after the
That was
Army,
go ahead.
I then went into I've just been in the technology industry since then, basically since the mid 90s. And that's it really. So but
Okay.
yeah.
Can you turn on your camera?
Not now because I'm doing stuff around the house. So I'm,
Oh, while you're walking around. Okay.
yeah, I'm cleaning up, and,
Um,
got a bunch of
okay. Well, other guys are going to drift in here sooner or later, but
stuff.
some of the topics I was recommending, well, there's what's going on that you see in the news every day. It changes. But I've got a thing that how much support does the U.S. government provide to Israel, and whom else do they provide it to? Because I saw somebody, my wife showed me an article that even though the current administration is trying to take apart different bureaus or agencies and stop the foreign aid, in essence, going out through the State Department and USAID. But they didn't touch a lot of money that's going to Israel. They're going to leave that standing. Yeah, humanitarian aid, funding for this, funding for that, and weapons and so forth. So that's
Well,
seems
that's money well spent because if we didn't give the Israelis money to do it, it probably wouldn't get done.
uh-huh. Oh, you
You
mean
know,
that we benefit from the actions they're taking on the side?
well, or maybe we'd have to do it, and I don't think we could do it. We maintain two corps in Germany, and that's a lot of troops, and some of them are right up there near the Russian border, of Sweden and countries like that. And we maintain a corps in the Far East, and then we've got a lot of troops in the states that can go either ways. So we're spread geographically pretty thin, and spread a lot of places. We basically have a corps worth of troops dedicated to Korea too.
Well, let me bring this up as a point of discussion. This shows basically. Let me get it up. I'll show it. I'm a little bit sloppy with this, so just give me a minute. I want to turn those two things
But
on.
I tell you, I can tell you, if we didn't go show the flag, a lot of these places wouldn't do a goddamn thing without us.
Right.
I can tell you that because I've been in NATO, and we've got to lead the way.
Well, yeah, I know that Trump's trying to push Europe into taking care of themselves, to some degree, participating more.
Who trying to push who?
Trump. I mean, he's
Oh
been,
hell, he doesn't know anything about the military. He failed the draft 4 times. He doesn't
yeah,
know shit about the military. Yeah.
yeah, but he's trying to get NATO to spend more than 2% of their and yeah,
Oh yeah, he'd love to have him spend more, but I've been in NATO, and these countries do the best they can in many respects. Yeah,
okay. So you guys see this? Is that clear enough?
yeah, I
How
can
much
see it.
support
Yeah.
the U.S. Gives to Israel and whom else? That's my quote. But here's the breakdown. So
Mhm.
Israel's getting like
Yeah, but that's not annually.
that's not annual.
No, God, no, it's nowhere near that much.
Oh, that's how much we've given.
Yeah,
Cumulative.
yeah. So I think that's you got to, without having the time frame on it, it gives a very um yeah, it gives a perspective that makes it
Oh,
sound.
I know what's happening here. I'm not looking at the article. Let me get to the article. I see what's happening. I'm looking at an excerpt because I put that map in there. So let's see what it says here. Four charts, four charts aid to Israel, blah, 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 US aid to Israel. How much?
Well, don't confuse Israel with NATO.
Right.
No,
Israel's
no,
not
they're
in NATO.
completely different,
Yeah.
and we can depend on the Israelis for putting up a good fight.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so here they got, as you said, Aaron, 310 billion cumulative.
Yeah, but
But
that's over 75 years. So
75 years, right?
yeah, so when you treat it that way, it's more like 5 to 10 billion.
Yeah, but we haven't had to send troops to Israel. The Israelis can handle themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
Probably do a better job than we could.
So a quick thing, Ken. Why are you on YouTube when you do
What?
this? Why are you on YouTube when you do this?
Oh, the reason I put it on YouTube is basically to get another file so that when I edit it, I got, a backup.
Okay.
And that's we post everything on YouTube. I've sent you links to the video shows. Some of them you've been in.
Sure, sure.
You've seen them. It's why are we posting it? The original start was Jim wanted to see if he could create a media that could be utilized by Pacifica,
Okay.
the Pacifica radio station network.
Sure.
That was part of his intention. And but I'm doing this mostly just keep myself active. I don't necessarily agree with the political things stated by the majority of the guests we interview. And of course, the military stuff is just academic. Who did what, how did Russia defeat Germany, and who made what mistake, and what happened with different things and coups and stuff. That's all like, oh, D-Day, very interesting stuff.
Well,
And,
D-Day is a long time ago. Were you
oh yeah,
alive at
yeah.
D-Day? Do you remember D-Day? I
No,
remember
I
D-Day.
wasn't
I can
even
remember
born.
D-Day.
Come on, how old were you then?
How old was I? I was about 10 years old.
Oh, there you go.
I can
So
remember because I've been back there about half a dozen times.
yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of these guys go back. We have one guy you must have seen, Mike Jankovic. He'll be on shortly. He's always comes on a little bit
You
late,
know,
but he's in Canada. He keeps going there once a year or once every 5 years. I
well,
haven't.
yeah, it's a nice place to visit, Normandy. And it's
Yeah.
historically very significant. Yeah. And it's interesting. I was there when Reagan came and gave a speech at Pointe du Hoc. Best speech I've ever heard in my life,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and things
He's
like that.
okay. I'm going to cut out on this. So, Aaron, what do you think about this? You're inclined to think where mostly the U.S. and Europe is benefiting by the presence that Israel presents in a military fashion.
I mean, I think I mean, it depends on I mean, I would say that Israel's posture in the last 10 to 15 years has shifted. Um, and they are, clearly, I would say they up until, well, I would say even now, focused on a much more anti-terrorism posture, not like a pure fight or a pure power um posture in the and so I would say that that that's really has more to do with their interests. And I think as they are redeveloping themselves from a power standpoint, um to focus more on, I would say, Iran, that's going to be a bigger open question, because their policy might at some point be in contention with our policy. And I would also say that, given the approach the Gulf is taking, to me that's sort of the more interesting dimension, right? Because the Gulf is not fully normalizing with Israel, but I would say really close. And if the Gulf eventually normalizes with Israel, which I think has a decent shot to happen in the next decade.
Well, when you're using the phrase "the Gulf,"
Yeah, it's
you
Saudi
mean
Arabia. It's Saudi
you don't mean
Arabia.
all of the states. You don't mean you
Yeah,
mean
no, no.
like
I mean Saudi Arabia ultimately, and
mostly Saudi Arabia,
well,
maybe.
Saudi Arabia is the Gulf ultimately. Like, from a power perspective, Saudi Arabia is 2/3 or 3/4 of the GDP of the GCC. The GCC is the Gulf Cooperation Council. That's like a little EU of the Gulf, right? It's made up of Saudi Arabia plus all the half a dozen Emirates, and so and the Kuwaitis. And so if you have if you have that entity normalized with Israel, especially economically normalized, which I think they're pretty close to doing, at least the economic piece of it, maybe not politically and maybe not.
Well, wasn't a big move made on that with the what's called the Abraham Accords?
Sure, like I said, but that's now 7 years old, so 8 years old. So the question
Well, it's
is,
weathered 7 years. It didn't fall apart yet.
no, absolutely. The question is that built on and extended to full economic normalization? Because that's what counts, right? Just the fact that people could kind of like see each other in a hotel and not tear each other apart, that's great. But after that, the next test is, okay, now what are we going to do with this, right? Are we going to buy, LNG from you? Are we going to set up a terminal? Are you going to buy technology? Like, is there going to be trade? Is there going to be agriculture? You're going to move commodities. I mean, that's where you measure the evolution of that relationship, right?
Trade, commerce,
Yeah,
and
exactly,
and visas, and so you
exactly. So the question,
access.
yeah, so the question in the next decade is, which I think is pretty likely, that they'll have very robust economic normalization with Israel and vice versa, which then puts pressure on Turkey, right? Because Turkey and the Israelis have basically deconstructed their old relationship. So the question is, can the Turks, the Gulf, and the Israelis build economically, not politically, culturally, none of that, just economically, can they build a cooperative structure that you could really measure as having progressed, right? Like a good example is, while UK exited from EU, there's still trade between the UK and the EU. It's down, but it's still there, right? There's still tremendous amount of commerce, in the hundreds of billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of euros and pounds. So the question is, relatively speaking, does the Gulf, Israel, and Turkey have that evolution in the next decade? If they don't, and it's just sort of like we can all meet in hotels and do PowerPoints and not tear each other apart, that's fine. But that doesn't really that's not much evolution. And so to me, that's sort of the big question, because if that happens, then eventually you'll see others normalize with the Israelis and vice versa. The big actor in this that most people aren't aware of is that Israel's largest defense trading relationship is actually with India. It's not the United States, right? So Israel sells around $10 billion worth of defense technologies to India, and the Indians obviously sell a tremendous amount of agriculture and industrial goods
What's the nature of the technology they're selling? It just military or?
well, no. I just pointed out the military piece of it. That's just one piece of it, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm just pointing out there's a $10 billion a year Israeli Indian defense trade that goes on just in defense. There's other areas that they're investing in, whether it's banking, whether it's agriculture, whether there's industrial goods, consumer goods. So they
So
have,
so
so
wait a minute. You're bringing up the fact that like the key thing to look forward for is Israel's association with Saudi Arabia because they control the peninsula. Those other you're not concerned that much about the small
well,
UAE.
I mean, they exist, but ultimately they might delay not doing what the Saudis want. But it's pretty hard for all the rest of the Emirates and states in the GCC to work against what Saudi Arabia wants, right? Like, so you can sort of delay that, but so in the end, if the Saudis normalize economically with the Israelis, or at least substantially, then that will lead to the Gulf doing that over time, the whole Gulf. And then that's going to put pressure on the Turks to, not lose out economically. And I think the key here is what the Saudis have figured out, or the Gulf has figured out somewhat, and the Israelis, is they can still have major conflicts politically with each other that aren't kinetic, but that are, substantial, but still have economic trade, which during the Cold War, that happened too, right? So, this idea that like that's impossible, is only impossible because people just say those words, right? And I think, in the end, what's going to be fascinating to see is the relationship that India has with Israel, and the Saudis have with Israel, and Turkey has with Israel, because that's a co-normalization between, growing economic partners, right? So the Turks are a very fast growing trading partner with India now, especially as the Turks have sided, not quite sidelined, but have rebalanced versus the Chinese, right? They've made it pretty clear, maybe not, I would say probably to the US level. Like we might yell a lot more than the Turks do in trying to constrain the Chinese in trading with the United States. But the Turks sort of just do it and make it more difficult for the Chinese. And they can't overcome, the Chinese can't buy their way out of it. They can't sort of, what do you call it? Co-op, interest really well. The Turks just
Well, I
won't.
mean, okay, all right. I thought China was trying to work its way towards the Black Sea to get a port.
Well, yeah, sure, but good luck getting through Azerbaijan, because the Turks have a very powerful relationship with the Azeris, and they're not going to let anybody do anything there that they don't approve. And so,
I mean, if they could come, okay, yeah, if they get it, I said the Black Sea, I meant the one to the right of that. What is that called? The Caspian.
Caspian Sea.
The
But so,
Caspian Sea
yeah,
doesn't
but
connect
remember
to
the
anything.
reason. But if you're trying to go to the Caspian Sea, then Iran, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Russia, all and Georgia have something to say, and so
Right,
the Chinese can't just like punch a hole and show up and be like thanks, right? It's not.
right.
It's the South China Sea with a bunch of, let's say, more self constrained states that don't want to antagonize China. China's leaving its backyard to go into someone else's backyard. So, the Turks
Right,
are
right.
very protective of those
Uh,
gas.
well, well, just this, because obviously you've spent a lot of time going over this, and some of the other guys have too. But so if Saudi Arabia is doing a lot of trade and activity with India,
Yes, they are.
isn't that bound up with Yemen and Oman?
Absolutely. Completely.
I mean, otherwise they have to, go around to get to India.
Sure. No, absolutely. They all do that. There's a ton of trade in the Gulf, between the Gulf and India. And by the way, trade historically, it's very ahistorical when you are trading far distances in the world relative to your local geographic logistics, obviously, right? You're trading with your backyard. Our largest trading partners are Mexico and Canada by a
Right.
mile, right? So, it's consistently, and that's normal for everybody else. So the Gulf, given that it's the Gulf,
Yeah, but I mean, but with India, I mean, there's no big buyers, there's no big market
what do
except
you mean? There's no
Saudi
big
Arabia.
market. What do you mean there's no big market?
I mean, what are you going to sell to Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan?
Oh, well, no, actually, India does sell quite a bit to not Pakistan, but to Bangladesh and to Sri Lanka and to South Asian states also, right? So, I mean,
Oh,
remember,
they got, yes, you got Thailand and Vietnam and Malaysia
yeah,
and so
yeah.
forth.
And so,
So they've got a big market down here in the southeast of the Bay of Bengal.
that's right. That's right.
All these
So,
countries, and those countries are very industrious, high GDPs, I guess, like Vietnam and Thailand.
are very fast growing, absolutely, right?
Right,
So right now, just so you know that the GCC it's about 100 and, let's say, 75 billion a year in trade, imports and exports between GCC and India. The EU's like over 150 billion a year. These other ASEAN states are, 130 plus billion a year. US is 100.
Now, India is a good big client for India too, for technology, right?
Yeah,
Security,
absolutely.
weapons, and computers, and that
Yeah,
kind of.
technology, agriculture, back and forth agriculture, like you name it, right? Like there's quite a bit. So, I think India is one of those countries that people have let's say, a historical cultural bias against and just kind of assume a certain perspective that's not 2025. Like India's imports and exports combined are, at this point in 25 estimates are close to 2 trillion, right? So, India is becoming a sort of silent trading superpower, right? And the longer everybody just kind of, says whatever, India can't be doing anything because, I watched documentaries in the 1970s and or whatever. It's like that is in India. Having gone to India quite a bit in my professional career, I've seen it, remarkably transform the last 25 years. And it's a radically different place than it was 25 years ago, much less 30 or 40 years ago. So India's and the Gulf has a very robust relationship that's probably eventually going to get to maybe half a trillion a year
Okay, so,
between.
so let me interrupt. So whenever you say the Gulf, you basically mean Saudi Arabia.
Well, I mean GCC, really. It's the Gulf Cooperation Council. It's all the states.
Who's in that exactly? How many countries?
Well, it's Kuwait, it's Oman, it's Yemen. I mean, not
Oh,
Yemen. Actually, Yemen's not in it, but it's Oman, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, plus the Emirates. So there's five.
not Iraq
Not Iraq yet, but it's.
or Jordan, not yet.
I
Okay.
think at some point
No,
Iraq's
it's
going.
Gulf state, Gulf.
Well, Iraq's a Gulf state
So
technically. Because the Gulf of
Jordan.
Yeah, because the Gulf of Basra, technically, Iraq's a Gulf state. I mean, it's just like legally. I mean,
Okay, so
Iran could
just to
be
bring
part
these
of
two other guys in. So we just wound up talking about this in terms of I was showing how much over a period of 75 years, the US has granted Israel $310 billion. That's cumulative. That's not every
Yeah.
year, every week. But so we were looking, it started with that, and it is the largest recipient
the
of
biggest recipient.
US aid.
Yeah.
And looking at that, and then Tom Thomas Morgan was saying, "Hey, they do a good job because Israel's got boots on the ground. They do a good job of maintaining sanity in the Middle East in terms of whatever we might get
Well,
involved with."
if you're depending on the sanity for who, I mean, I think they help maintain American hegemony. Yeah, but that's not a good thing for most Arabs, Iranians, or
Well, if
anybody
you
but
don't care
Americans.
about religion
I
or
mean,
politics,
I think
if you're
Iran,
just looking at it
Israel,
militarily, not
they help. They're like the enforcer. They're our mafia state in the
yeah,
Middle East.
nothing wrong with that.
Well,
You're going to be touchy about it.
well,
You know, you go get a job at the what's it called? The Goodwill. Is that it? No, I mean the Salvation Army. It's a rough world. There's a lot of things going on.
and Israel's also done a lot of things that have gotten us in trouble and done a lot of damage to American foreign policy,
Um,
and our increasing liability, which is pretty
oh
clear.
no, now you're going on into the history of American liabilities, and there's a big disagreement there. You're mostly talking about you're saying a lot of trouble for U.S. in terms of what the newspapers say is right and wrong, what's moral or immoral, or that violates our Constitution. It's those things. You're not talking about force, dominance over sea routes and the ability to have commerce between nations and the ability to build things and
There,
handle
there,
population.
there,
You're
they
talking
were.
about principles,
Israel is cited as a
lawyers and
justification
moralists.
by one Osama bin Laden. So yeah, and again, plenty of other. Israel's a major reason for terrorism against the U.S. So
Right. That's a war thing. That's
I
right.
mean, it's certainly and our connection with them.
That's
So,
true.
so that's, bare minimum 3,000 dead Americans. And
Yeah, I don't know, but that's a whole other topic. I'll bet you there's people who are right here in this meeting who would not say it didn't happen the way it's been said to happen. It was Osama bin Laden got 17 guys
don't try
together.
that. Don't try
He
that with
decided to
Jim.
do it.
Jim will,
Look,
Yeah,
I
Jim,
was
Jim
I
will
was
do
object to
it.
you very
look, guys,
strongly.
I was down at World Trade that day. I was at IBM over on Broadway, right next to
Who's
Central.
that, Aaron?
Yes.
Okay,
So
wait, let me kill
yeah.
that sharing.
So
So
I'm just saying, like, let's maybe shift away from 9/11 conspiracy talk to something.
Jim is here.
it's an emotional topic.
You can
It's
get
an
Jim
emotional
started on
topic,
that.
but I totally agree. The government would never lie to the public. They never do anything. There's no such thing as a false flag operation. Never happened. Not with the American government.
Not
Or,
with,
Talking about 911?
yeah, he's
I
getting
want to
into
talk
that.
about that tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
please don't, because I'm not gonna stay on any time talking about that. That's not
that's
not
right.
that's not
Yeah,
my.
there's a lot of emotional feeling about it. But in any event, so we're looking at the money. But I mean,
Wait,
before we leave,
Daryl has his
Daryl wants
hand
to
up.
say something.
Daryl has
do you
his hand.
think, I want to know, Aaron, you talked a lot. Let's get Jim and Daryl. Do you think
Take
America's
Daryl in. Bring Daryl in.
Americans and Alex, America's support of Israeli government over the last 75 years is it good or bad? Or it should stop? It was good. It should be stopped now. What?
Good for
It's a
who?
lot of money. It's the biggest client we have. It's Israel. $310 billion in the last 75 years. And it's
Well,
ahead
all
of
you have to do is look at the newsreels and see all that American equipment they have stacked up in the desert. You know,
it's a
we're a
machine. The
big
money comes
supplier of
back.
them.
The money comes back to our.
But Ken, you should let Daryl had his hand up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Daryl. Daryl, you got something?
Daryl.
Raise your hands, guys. I don't know.
He did. Daryl did. Daryl
did.
did.
I'm not. I missed it. Okay, I'm not sick. I could go ahead, Daryl.
First of all, I'm really pleased. I guess that's the word I can use right now. To be able to talk to you all again. What what I would suggest is that we move away from talking about using country names and start using political leaders' names, because my current revelations on all of this is that if you could change the mind of about 25 people, the nations will either profit or be destroyed by the psyches, the
What
political
25 people are you
experiences.
talking about? What 25 people are you talking about?
I would start with Vladimir Putin, then move on to Donald Trump. As figureheads well, Putin is an entity unto himself. Trump is a front for a group of people who are using him as a figurehead to get their agenda accomplished. However, I think the most important thing that people could benefit from, and I think the core of all challenges that we're currently facing, is that on the one hand, people attribute the change in world poverty to the success of capitalism. And whereas I see, my perception is, rather than I see, my perception is that most people on the planet have little understanding of how they perceive what it is their function is on the planet, and that if you can point to anything negative, meaning people failing to being allowed to live a prosperous, successful life that isn't connected to the inherent components of capitalism, which requires slavery.
Okay, hey, let me cut you in there a minute, Daryl. We're going to be talking about worldwide philosophies in about 3 weeks from now. We're not going to be talking about current events. I mean,
I'm talking
that's what we're
about
doing
current
now.
events.
This is
I'm
not
talking
current
about
events.
I
You're talking
live in a
about
state.
worldwide philosophy.
No,
You know,
that's not what
capitalism
I'm
versus
talking about.
communism. You're not.
No.
Okay.
Right now, I'm going through a whole bunch of stuff right now.
Personally,
Oh man. I don't have any phone contact
you don't have any.
because I'm not able to contact anybody by phone
All right.
because my financial situation got screwed up.
Okay.
And I'm attempting to restore that because of the way that finances, I'm talking about small finance, operates is that most times you're tied into an institution that
Where are
may
you
or
located? Where are you
I'm in New
located?
York City.
In New
I'm
York
in
City,
Cold
you're
City in the
financially
Bronx.
strapped? Is that what you're saying?
What?
You're saying in New York City, you're financially strapped.
I'm having challenges. I'd rather do it
Well,
that
no,
way,
well, we
Tom.
all do. I understand that. There's nothing wrong with that. It just,
No,
you know, I can understand it.
it's
Yeah.
different, Tom. That's like telling that's like who was the person who said this week, "Oh, those old people can miss a check in Social Security and it'll be okay." Well, I live in a I live in a naturally occurring retirement community, and if people miss checks here, then are you familiar with New York,
Oh
Tom?
yeah, I've been to New York many times. Yeah. Yeah,
Right. Are
I
you
went to
familiar
school at
with?
West Point. I went to New York a lot, you
Oh
know.
no, you're talking about West Point is like
Yeah,
I'm talking
I
about New York City.
no, I went to New York City. Where do you think we went to have a good time?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I've been to New York a lot, you know.
I live in a community that is the largest cooperative in the world.
What
And
are you talking about?
nobody
What
knows
can you
about it.
get? What's the name of the place? Where do you
He
live?
lives up in
Co-op
Co-op
City.
City. Co-op City in the
Co-op
Bronx.
City?
In the Bronx. Co-op
Ken,
City in
you
the
don't
Bronx.
know Co-op City?
Ken's been out in
There's a lot of
California.
co-ops in Manhattan.
California's been out in California too long.
When did you leave for California, Ken?
Well, there's 20, 30 million people. They all have different stories. Everybody's not in the same box. It goes up
But
and down
they
the
still
curve.
live among 100 billionaires.
You might,
One
Let
not
me tell
even
you,
one
among
was
100.
the first time I went to New York City, I saw
yeah.
Julie Andrews in The Boyfriend, her first Broadway show. I saw it
Uh-huh.
right there in Times Square. It was wonderful.
Right.
And then I went for other things later. Do you remember Julie Andrews? You know Julie Andrews? Maybe you don't. I don't know.
Yeah, well, New York is up for some people and down for others, just like
Well,
everywhere else in the world.
Yes. Hey, you got that right.
Not my point. Let me
Oh.
see if I can make a point that you all can maybe latch on to. All right, so there was a mayor who extended his term of office due to 9/11. So he was in office for 12 years when he was term limited for 8, Michael Bloomberg. When he became mayor, he had a wealth of $3 billion. Today, well, I should say, the last time I looked, his net worth was $104 billion.
Billion?
Billion.
No.
He's like number 10 on the Forbes
Okay,
real-time
okay,
billionaires list.
Daryl, there's lots of people who have lots of money. There's 3 people who
Not the point, Ken. Give me a
so
break.
what's the point?
I
There's rich people
apologize
and poor
for
people.
having to take so long to make a point,
What's the
but there
point?
are 100 billionaires who
Yeah,
live in New York City,
yeah.
a city in which you have, I wish I had the figure. I don't wish I had the figure. I
Well, you
just
can
have
move
it
to Trenton,
prepared
you know.
properly.
If you don't like it, you can go to New Jersey. You can go to Trenton.
That's right.
Why do
That's
I have
right.
to go anywhere when I was born in New York?
You can hitchhike. You can go to New
You're
Jersey.
missing the point. The
You can
point
get on
is
the
that
ferries and go up to
capitalism
Yonkers, you know?
requires slavery. That
Oh,
you have
slavery. Well, you can go to Haiti. Did I have slavery in
And we
Haiti?
can, we can make
no, they have the
10
American.
put up,
They have
10
They
families
have
in his
a
house.
You
long
feel there's
line of
slavery in the
American.
U.S., go to somewhere
They
else.
have a
Go to Staten
long
Island.
line
Go to
of
Haiti.
American and European denial of their sovereignty.
I think you need a cup of coffee. That's what I think. I'll be honest. And I've very rarely have an opportunity to be honest. I think you need a cup of coffee or at least maybe a glass of milk. Just something,
But
you know,
Why would you
because
offer me two
you don't sound,
poisons?
this is evaluative, but
Why would you offer me 2 poisons in order to make me feel better? One is filled with a chemical that it does have cancer capabilities, the
yeah,
coffee,
okay,
but
okay.
it's got the caffeine that'll drive you insane.
Yes, I understand. But I don't know
Which
what you
is
got
why
to do
most
right now, but
why
it doesn't
which is
sound
why
good.
most United Statesians love the product.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So
Now,
find a better place to
can I
live.
make my point so I can get off
Yes,
and
you
we
can
can
make the
move on?
point. You're not happy. I got it.
No, that's not the point.
Yes, it is. You're critical of your environment.
No, I'm not.
You're not.
I
Okay.
was just using that as the backdrop for trying to understand why a person who used to be a mayor of New York City with a net worth of $104 billion.
I know why he made that money. He's trying to catch up with Hillary Clinton. He got very jealous of them.
Hillary Clinton's down on the
And
billionaire
and the
list.
other girl who was the head of the house.
Hillary
Hillary
wants to catch
isn't
up to
on the
him.
billionaire list. Sorry.
Yeah, they got very jealous of the
He's
other
trying to catch up
politicians.
with Elon Musk, maybe at
You know, yeah,
over 300.
there you go. Well, all you got to do
No,
is
not the point.
invent
Once
something.
again, all I'm asking for
Hmm.
is people to understand the language that's required in order to profit in New York City. I don't want any of their money. I don't
Oh,
want
okay,
anything that they have. What I'd
okay.
like them to do is to
Well, good.
leave every.
But then
Yeah, but
you're doing well because you got what you don't want. I mean,
do
you
you
don't
think
have
that
what,
any of the 3 of us I see on the screen can really influence this situation that you're going on. I mean, can we influence it? I don't think very much. I mean,
Tom,
I
you
don't
think
disagree with it, but I don't think we can influence it too much.
Tom, I'm not talking about my personal situation.
Well, it sounds like it.
Sounds like it.
That's why I need to be in these discussions more, because I'm talking about the city of New York
Mm.
cutting all its services while it houses these 100 billionaires.
Mm.
And what I'm asking from the 100 billionaires is to who they could make a loan to the city.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
go
but,
give
but,
a
but, but you're
call.
looking for a political situation, and I thought we were going to talk about military things,
Yeah, yeah. You go
Then,
give a call.
okay, I'm going to give you the military connection.
No, no, no. You're
Well,
taking
I
too
think I know
long.
the military connection, you
Daryl,
can
you're taking
repeat
too
it.
long.
It's all right, but, I don't disagree with the military connection, but
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold it. Thomas, Daryl did served in the armed forces in Vietnam, right?
Yes.
So he's a veteran.
sure, I am too. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't, when I was in Vietnam, I didn't worry about this kind of stuff. I tried to keep my ass covered so I didn't get shot,
Right.
you know.
You were in the infantry, right, Tom?
I was in the artillery
Artillery.
and
You were in the
infantry
army, put
and
it that way.
aviation and
On the
engineers. I was in a
ground.
lot of things. And
Oh,
and,
all
and
right.
staying alive was a preoccupation.
But
Yeah.
you were in actual physical combat as compared to when I was working in Thailand at Karat and at Udon.
Yeah, but that was good duty. That was wonderful duty if you could get over there.
Yeah,
Because
from
I've
your
been there.
perspective.
And I had two classmates of mine that were there. And if I ever went over to see them, you would have thought I was the president of the United States coming. They were wonderful. Thailand is wonderful,
Yeah.
but it was not typical of Vietnam by too much. No.
Yeah. So that's Daryl. Your time is up. I got to go back to Tom. Tom, and then Jim. Is our support of Israel, because you told me, but you didn't tell these other guys, is the U.S. support of Israel worthwhile? Tom?
Oh yeah, if we weren't doing it, either it wouldn't get done and things would go to hell, or we'd have to pick up the gap. We'd have to activate another corps and send it over there. And I'm well aware of how much the defense budget has to spend on this stuff. We'd have to commit at least a corps in Israel to do what the Israelis do, and they can probably do it better. I've worked with the Israelis enough to really respect them. They know how to do things.
So do you think that they contribute to allowing passage through the canals and stuff? Just freedom of
Israel has nothing to do with the Panama Canal.
not the Panama Canal, the
They can't do it.
Suez
They're
Canal.
not gonna.
Well, they're going to be interested in the Suez Canal, and of course, it stays open, doesn't it?
The Yemenis would love if the
hold it a
Israelis
minute.
were to invade.
Alex, hold it a minute. Let's go talk one at a time, but you're going to go next. So you think that they contribute to stability in the Middle East?
Yes.
Good.
As good as they can. It's not perfect, but as good as they can.
Okay.
Because I've worked with Israeli officers, and they're very competent.
Right. Okay, Jim and then Alex.
So what are you talking about? You want to know, what was this, Kenny?
Well, it's a question of this all for me started with
what you were talking about, the Houthi stuff?
Trump are trying to get rid of USAID and so forth, but they're continuing, they're excluding support for Israel. They're going to leave that alone.
Well, that's okay.
So,
first of all, okay.
When you go back on that, you see that.
Let me talk about the news that happened today.
Yeah, go ahead.
I happen to know Jeffrey Goldberg personally.
Yeah.
And I sent him an email last night before he fully revealed the chat that he was part of, which the whole thing is nuts, as we all know. This is absolutely nuts. I mean, and Daryl's raising his hand there. I mean, it's just
Are you
uh,
talking about, wait a minute, you're talking about
the
security
signal, the
breach, the
signal. That's
security
right. That's
breach?
right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's not what we're talking about. That's
Yeah,
a
I know,
different.
but see, you're asking questions here
That's the
with
Democrats waving a
conducting.
flag. Oh, look at them. Look at
No, it's
them.
not a question. Yeah, well, right now the air campaign is being launched against the Yemen in
Yeah.
conjunction with Trump feeling. I mean, you have to look at the whole strategic picture in the Middle East right now. The Israelis, the Washington Post had an article over the weekend where the Israelis were talking about mobilizing a sizable force to go into Gaza,
Uh-huh.
5 divisions of troops. And so that's part of it. I just came from a big seminar in Syria, so I'm sort of filled with all this stuff. Um, the situation in Syria we were discussed, and the question of it, is Israel, what your question is Israel worth America backing or not? Is that your question, basically?
Yeah, because we've given them the most support over the last 75 years compared to any other
Well,
country. The
all right,
most foreign aid.
all right, well, okay, that's okay. The question of it being worth, what's it worth for what? I mean, is it worth because, you
Our
know,
international goals.
well, it depends on how we look at this. I mean, obviously, Syria, look, the Israelis, um, there has to be peace in that neighborhood. Okay, simple as that. And because they're just going to keep on fighting until there's some sort of reconciliation, which is idealistic between the Palestinians and Israelis. Um, and from the point of view of right now, if you look at Trump, I mean, Trump, I'm just describing how he looks at it. He basically sees Israel as a positive ally. He's essentially sent them about, what, $7 billion worth of ordnance in the past 2 months. He's restarted to send the weapons that Biden was playing games with to sort of put pressure on them. He's essentially um, committed us to uh, interoperate with the Israeli defense forces. This has been going on a long time in Central
Right,
Command.
right.
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
premise. The
And
question
Yeah.
is it a waste of time?
well, the question is how you view a waste of time. I mean, like is it a question of what thrust the United States to even recognize the state of Israel in 1947, 48? That's a big political debate. But here you had X millions of Jews at the end of the war who had no place to go because of what occurred in Europe. But then, of course, who suffers from this? Who was displaced from that? The people who lived in Palestine, the people who were Palestinians, and they were the ones who had to bear the brunt of what had occurred in terms of European anti-Semitism that resulted in the Holocaust. So, I mean, the question of its serving interest, I mean, this is like, I just came from a situation where there was one of the members of the board of trustees of Columbia, who's a nice guy. He's a very successful hedge fund guy. We were talking about the whole situation of them caving into the Trump administration. And I told him, I said, look, it's easy for me to make a criticism about you because I don't control or have to, deal with a $15 billion endowment like you do. I don't have to deal with a $5 billion budget like you do. But you know as well as I, and this guy Keith, by the way, his name is Keith Coggins. He and I had discussed, argued this back in November. I said, "What are you guys going to do when Trump decides to take money from you? How are you going to defend yourselves?" And we're talking about the $400 million that they just took
Wait,
from the university.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But I know this is all in the news. I'm going to ask you.
yeah,
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but
yeah,
you seem to be implying,
yeah.
look, they shouldn't have gone there in the first place. So no
No,
matter what
well,
you
well,
say,
well, well,
get
that, well,
out, give it back to the Palestinians.
no, no, no. Well, at this point, forget about it. It's just the facts are on the ground. I mean, this is
Right.
like we have, they've been this been, you can go back and forth. I mean, actually, the whole point of the discussion was they've adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is that if you criticize the state of Israel, you're anti-Semitic. Now, I consider that complete, utter bullshit.
Yeah, most of us do.
But and you know and you know and I know Jews who feel the same way about it. Is like what you can't criticize. I mean, Israelis criticize the state of Israel.
Right.
So, you know, the now again, it's a very difficult question to answer in some ways, Kenny, because Israel has nuclear weapons. I mean, they've got about 200 nuclear weapons. So they're not going anywhere. I mean, they can say, you know what, you want to try to annihilate us, we're going to annihilate you. And so there's that.
Well, who are they talking to? Who are they saying that to?
Saying what to?
We're going to annihilate you.
Oh,
Who are they
they've been in. There have been times during the.
They're not saying that to us.
No, of course not. They're not saying that. They're saying it. They're saying it to those countries that oppose them. Because
Well,
why?
who do you think? Who do you think they're saying it to?
Oh, I'm sure they openly say it about Iran. If Iran decides to get nuclear capability, that's
Yeah,
always been
but
looked at as a case
I
of
don't
sellout.
I don't think they do, and I think we'll do things if we think it's gonna get close, won't we? I think we'll
Well,
do things.
well, see, that's what we're in a very interesting and volatile situation because
Yeah.
With Trump in the White House, he was
Well,
arguing to bomb
yeah. I
them.
agree. With Trump in the White House, you never know what that
Yeah,
guy's gonna
well, that's
do.
right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. You never know what he's going to do, and
or those goddamn guys that he appointed to important jobs that never did anything except do nothing. You know.
well, look at the bullshit this went on for the past 2 days. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, like they first denied. They said, "Oh, I mean, what kind of idiotic bullshit happened to start with to put Jeffrey Goldberg on a phone call like that? I mean, give me a break. I mean, really idiotic bullshit." But the question of whether Israel is quote valuable or not as a country, I mean, depends on your point of view. I mean, like some people will say, well, it's the last vestige of imperialism from the 19th century. And they'll make an argument that is, hey, you got to listen to it. I mean, a certain amount of people in humanity believe that and agree with that point
Yeah,
of view,
yeah.
whether you like
Yeah,
it.
I think you have to be careful about that. But I've known a lot of Israeli officers at the Command and General Staff College,
Yeah.
and I thought they thought pretty much the way we do, and they just
Well,
wanted some help, and we give it to them.
one thing today, this Israeli woman was telling me, she teaches at NYU. She was telling me one of the reasons why she finds some of the people who oppose the relationship of Columbia University with Tel Aviv University is that she says, look, all these academics in Israel who teach at Tel Aviv University, they're all a bunch of liberals, and half the student body is Palestinian. So what the hell is going on here? I mean,
Wait a minute. Please precise. What student body?
the student body at Tel Aviv University
Oh, of Tel Aviv. Okay.
there's a large percentage of them are Arab Israelis, are Palestinian Israelis. So, and that's never reported on. And she said, the thing that's not reported on in the United States is these demonstrations all the time against Netanyahu that go on all the time in Israel. And she pointed out another thing to me. She says some people think in some of these neighborhoods, like in Haifa or etc., it's like 20, 30% Palestinian. And she says they have joint street celebrations. She was showing a picture of her little baby. One of her
So it
babies.
sounds like you're talking about the positive aspects of the Israeli
Well, I'm
government.
just trying to say, well,
They
it's not,
have
it's
they have
more,
half of the Arab
it's more
Israelis going to college.
that it's more,
Let
it's,
people protest, even
yeah,
if
well,
they're
it's not a
critical of
question
the
of pro
government.
people. Look,
It's
but
a
see,
democratic country.
there are Israelis who are not, there are a certain percentage of Israelis who really do feel that there should be a reconciliation. Now, I knew a lot more in the 1970s and early 80s, but then you had the first and second intifada. And then
Yeah,
you had situations where people were being killed by suicide bombers.
right.
And, you know, I mean, I've met women. I met a woman once who did a film where she'd go interview the people who had been caught attempting the suicide bomb. They never take, they were either arrested, they were in prison,
Yeah.
but go talk to them. And it's like very heavy thing to here's this woman who lost her loved ones to a suicide bomber, and she's sitting there like, "What the hell you guys doing? Why are you trying to
Right,
do?"
right, right. Yeah, I've
And
seen,
so
I know
and
those.
so and then the reason I'm saying this is like I'm looking at the Washington Post this weekend. They said the Israelis are about ready to send in 5 divisions of troops into Gaza. Like, and so what the hell? We're back to this whole goddamn mess not getting resolved.
Uh-huh.
And one point was made. There was a guy there who'd been the ambassador in Syria before Assad. He actually was on the verge of working out a peace deal between Israel and Syria. And he mentioned that he'd been there in 2011. It was just before the uh, the repression of people in southern Syria occurred that broke the civil war. But he was talking about how, he went to Netanyahu, he went to Bashir Assad. This is
I
after.
understand, but you're telling me individual people. You're not talking about the overall scene. So the crimes, Israel has crimes, okay? The U.S. has crimes. The question is, should we be sending more money to Sudan or to Israel or to Egypt?
Well, but it's in
Are we
our
getting
self-interest. It's
stability?
how we
Do we
perceive it in
get,
our
what do we
self-interest.
get that's positive?
Yeah, but the question is how we
Wrong.
perceive our self-interest. We've been supporting Israel militarily
Yeah,
since 68, 67, after
right.
the Six-Day War. That's when we began to send the F-4s, the Skyhawks. That's when they purchased all those weapon systems. That's when the real big support started to happen from the United States.
Right.
And that was seen in our self-interest because that was also wrapped up in the Cold War. We were sitting there competing against the Soviet Union because the Egyptians and the Syrians were allies of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So again, the question becomes, you know, I mean, when do you get to a situation where you do not have constant warfare going on? I mean that's the point I'm making. I mean beyond the question of does it yes, from a certain point of view, it does indeed serve interests in the United States, precisely because, someone when they talk about the war in Ukraine and Trump says, "Oh, all this money you guys spend," well, that 100 billion or plus dollars is being spent in America to equip to buy weapons from
At
U.S.
least half
army.
of it. At least half of it
Well,
came.
whatever, well, large amount of it, and the same thing with Israel. The question is, the Israelis they're getting military aid annually. They're the largest recipient of military aid from the United States. I think Egypt is number one or is number two or three. And
Yeah.
why? We're not doing it for like altruism. We're doing it for our own self-interest. And part of the self-interest, when they look strategically at Israel, is Israel's essentially viewed as a reliable ally in the Middle East that we can depend on, almost like a aircraft carrier that we can, in worst case scenario, depend on. They use these words. So, but again, how do we move to peace? How do we move to a peace situation where we're not constantly at war? Maybe some interests don't want to have that. Some people make
None of us
an
will
argument,
see that in our lifetime.
and you're
What
Yeah.
you
probably
just
right,
said,
Tom.
none of us will see it in our
And
lifetime.
you're probably right, Tom. You're probably right.
And so we got to make the best of it
Right, right.
somehow.
But see, what I don't want to see is like see what we're seeing right now is that the Iranians are on the verge of deploying nuclear weapons, and that could trigger the Israelis. And with Trump in the White House, they could probably persuasively argue, you know what? Let's knock that capability out. And I don't think and then there's all these peace feelers from Iran that want to sort of have an accommodation with the United States.
Right.
Are you talking about taking the nuclear capability away from the Russians?
No,
No,
we're
I,
talking
yeah,
about the Iranians.
Uh,
Iranians.
oh,
Iranian.
take it away from the Iranians. Well, we
Yeah.
could probably do that. I don't think we ought to mess with
I know
Russia on
about
it.
that, Tom. Iran
Well,
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 is
well,
preparing
Alex.
for.
Let me just finish. I think that would be first of all, that's the kind of thing I don't think
Well,
we should get to the
that's
point to because you know what gets me. I've actually interviewed. I remember years ago when they started to have Iranian rock and roll and rap artists in the United States. And I talked to these guys, and they said, "Look, we can't stand the government, but guess what? If you guys decide to pressure us to have to defend our country, we're going to defend our country."
oh
And so,
yeah.
and so I said, and here these people are, and if you look at there's YouTube videos of modern Tehran, and it shows how, because remember they were having these ridiculous fights over women wearing habib, and they, when you look at modern Tehran now, you see that people, you have some women who are dressed in an Orthodox fashion, but then you have some women dressed in a completely Western fashion, and nobody's going after each other to drive each other nuts. The,
No,
the sort of Islamic police. So my point about this is like how, doesn't, wouldn't, and Trump likes to talk about his bullshit about how he's in favor of peace and all that. I mean, I'm looking at the Black Sea agreement he just made with Ukraine. One thing it includes is essentially uh, forcing Ukraine to surrender to allow the Russians to lift sanctions. I mean, it's complete bullshit. It's just, all this stuff about they complain about, oh, like Trump goes Russia, Russia, Russia. Well, he's never ever convinced me that he hasn't in his soul of soul some sort of uh, relationship that makes him want to defend Russia all the time. It makes no sense to me, his attitude. I mean, I frankly look on him as
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to interrupt and say something about Trump. You're just talking about personalities. Fine.
bullshit.
I like Kate Smith. Remember her? She used to sing "God Bless America."
oh yeah,
A
oh
little
yeah,
chubby, but she had a good voice.
oh
So
yeah,
when you're just talking about a person, he's a rotten person. He's a narcissistic maniac. So
yes.
what? That's the.
Oh, well,
It's
that's
not
good.
one
I'm
Oh yeah,
glad
person.
you advanced that
Ken, you're
state,
gonna care. You're gonna
Kenny.
care
Not
I'm
an
right
glad
now.
you
emperor.
advanced to that state. That now you admit he's a what? Did you say? He's a
Ken,
homicidal
you
maniac. Good.
Great. You
Great.
Oh
want
I'm
your
no,
great.
no,
social
no. At least he's
security taken
alive.
away, Ken? Because that's what Trump is. Trump, this great guy.
But Biden died like 8 months ago at least, and they propped him up with clones.
He's doing it
No,
now, Ken.
he
He's trying
couldn't
to
say
take your
anything.
social.
He didn't have a goddamn meeting. Trump comes up and he talks and he tells you what he's doing.
Oh, come on. He's just a fucking bullshit artist from
So
Queens.
he's a
Great.
bullshit artist. What's the difference? He's the president. Get over it. Stop it.
What do you
You
mean,
know,
stop
it's
it? What,
not,
I was
it's
supposed to accept
ridiculous.
this
No,
stuff
you
from
It's
stand
him?
up
all
to
in
an
the
asshole
TV
like that.
stations, all in the newspapers. They all
No,
spent
Ken.
8 years attacking Trump.
Again, Ken. If you
Eight
want to
years,
still have
8 years, and they couldn't put him out. 8 years,
Ken, if
they
you want,
lost. Come
Ken,
on,
they're gonna jail all your.
get over it. He won the election without cheating, or maybe he
Right.
cheated like the Democrats
Yeah,
did. He
let's let
won.
him destroy Social Security. Let's
Exactly.
let him destroy
Yeah,
No,
Medicaid.
no.
Let's let him
Forget
yeah.
about
destroy
that, Ken.
Medicaid.
You
No,
got
Let's
no, they
let him
you
won't
still
destroy.
you still got
let's let him
The guy
trigger a
from
recession in the
climate
United
change
States. What are
first.
you crazy, Kenny? Come on, man.
Not crazy.
Ken.
You're crazy. You're just stuck on a button.
No, no,
If
no,
somebody,
Ken.
you
Because
want to go
this
back and talk to Daryl for a while? He'll tell us about the billionaires.
because
Come
Daryl's
on.
gonna agree with us.
Yeah, Dowser, that's right. No. He does
No,
not think Trump's the
Ken,
problem.
you want you
He thinks it's imperialism.
Well,
Capitalism and imperialism.
Well, that's
Problem.
right. That's right. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Boy,
it. That's the problem. I
Ken.
think the major problem is women. You got to
Don't
chase after them.
don't count your Social Security, Ken. Because it might not be there if Trump has his way.
what? He has Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick is the guy was in charge of Cantor and Fitzgerald. Okay.
You're talking about
Now,
a
that's a dumb
personality.
comment. That's Howard Lucknott's the guy who made that stupid comment. Oh, if my mother-in-law's 92 years old, and if she doesn't get her Social Security check, well, that's okay. It's going to come in the mail. Look, I just found out yesterday something about Social Security, all this bullshit that Trump's up to with Social Security. Well, guess what? It's now started to have a practical impact on people I know.
Oh, okay.
One of the things I discovered was that they've been messing with this issue something was passed in 2022 by Biden. So you want to sit there and scream about Biden. They passed something that required a primary care doctor to electronically transmit to a pharmaceutical chain the scripts for medications that people need. Now there's something I have to find out, but it turns out they're sending out letters that says that CVS no longer will participate in that program I'm saying, well, what the hell? Why aren't they participating in that program? Because now someone who's elderly has to physically go get the script.
Uh-huh.
Now, imagine what that means. So someone who's, let's say, 83,
Oh,
not
come on.
mobile,
No. Come on,
they
Jim.
have to go
So
physically get the
heartbreak. You're going to
script.
tell me there's a girl who fell in the well. We got to stop everything and rescue the girl. Just stop it.
It's,
Cut it
you
out.
know,
Be
Ken,
careful.
people are gonna die
83 is
over this,
young.
which is people are
83
gonna
is
die.
young.
People are gonna die.
Be
And you don't
careful.
fucking care, Ken.
Hand up
Somebody
for
else.
this long.
Go on,
Let
Bill.
me explain to you that what
Look under your bed, find a
is
Democrat, and ask them to
happening
do
to me
something.
And
right
shut
now.
up, Ken. Let
They're
Jim
all
Yeah.
talk.
hiding under the bed.
Jim is
Shut the
saying
fuck up,
is
Ken.
happening.
You're just doing a pick case. I mean, this
Ken,
is
do you
like the
not
most
know how to
silliest
shut
thing.
up?
Oh, let me tell you about this person. Let me tell you about that person.
Jesus.
This guy is 95
Mike,
years
you
old
wanna
and
yell at him
can't
You
too?
see.
know,
I mean,
Kenny,
please take
you
some
grew up in
consideration.
Brooklyn.
Now,
You
what's going to
didn't grow
happen
up
to
in
him?
Queens. You grew up in Brooklyn. You didn't grow up in Queens. He grew up in Queens.
No.
The difference in your attitude about this stuff, man.
No. I look like most people when I
Yeah.
was younger, but before I was 25, I was very empathetic, would help people in the street. I would take people at home, homeless people, bring them home, feed them, all of that stuff. I spent a good 20 years doing
But
counseling.
then what happened? You morally
You get
degenerated?
older, then you got to say, this is the suicide of empathy. I'm empathetic for every little bug and cat and kitten, and
Suicide of
this one and
empathy.
that
That's
one
a
and
Oh,
that
you
good
person
should
and
be.
this
statement.
person.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
about the prisoners?
you
What
should
about the
be.
prisoners?
You
About the
should be
people who are
empathetic to
in
every
jail?
bug, Kenny.
You
Every
know,
cat.
bye. Let me try. Look under the
All
bed,
right.
find a Democrat, and tell him to say, please get up and defend Social Security. Don't let him get away with it. Find somebody to do that. Don't complain.
Oh, I don't have to find anybody. What the hell do you think? If he starts attacking Social Security, forget about it. Everybody's going to be out in the streets.
That's right. That'll do it. Just like he should have lost the election because his Supreme Court electees canceled Roe v. Wade. That's it. Suicide. Didn't happen.
Hold tight. He actually tried to overthrow the government and got away with it. So, give me a break.
Okay, great. There you go with that too.
No, what do you mean? Yeah, and then people always say,
Come
like,
on, you know the story. You know who was there. You know the whole story. You know what happened.
what do I know about this story? I watched it like everybody else did. I know people who went down there.
No. Don't tell me what you saw on the media. I'm talking about the trials and the hearings, what they did and didn't do. Not the stuff they put on MSNBC and CNN.
Yeah.
So
Fabricated.
you're
I mean,
saying
they're
that what
still
I did.
doing that.
So
They still
actually,
do it.
actually,
They tell you this, but they don't tell you
I
that.
did not see Trump say, I'm going to go walk with you down to Capitol Hill and let's go, whatever kind of bullshit he said,
All right.
get
Cut
all
it out.
these people to go
Stick
storm
on
the
that. Talk
Capitol.
about
Come on, give me a
January
break.
6th. Talk about January 6th.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the funds that the State Department sent for
Yeah.
cross
Oh, yeah. The
to
State
doing.
Department sending in to Africa
Jim,
money to
Yeah.
help people not die of AIDS. That
Right.
is some kind. So,
Jim, did
No,
you?
no.
and then
Look at
you
the
have an
money they're
idiot like
sending for other
Musk.
things.
Let's,
And then
Why
you
Jim,
have
the
an
did
hell are
idiot.
you?
we doing anything
And
about
you have
that?
an idiot like Musk saying,
Why?
"Oh, it's
No.
a
Okay, great. Let's
cesspool."
go
Give
on
me a
that. That's a
break.
very key thing. And I
Yeah.
think
What?
you defend them doing that. Why is the
Why? I
United
do
States
defend it
government responsible for the HIV epidemic in Somalia or South Africa or
because
Kenya? No,
that's in
the
our
Congo.
national
Why
interest.
are we doing that?
That's in our national interest to do that. That's why.
Why? Why?
And why? You think it's why shouldn't if we have the ability to
Why? There's
stem an
people dying all
HIV
over the
AIDS,
world.
Well,
you
the
get back.
reason why is because we said it was in our national interest. Now you can argue that point.
Yeah.
We said it was in our
True,
national
true,
interest.
true. You could know
You know, but
fair point, Tom. But then it's well as it became our national interest to curb the spread of HIV/AIDS.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and,
I think
and
that's
so
good. I think that's good.
and let's give another example. You think like look at this idiot who they have there in Robert Kennedy Jr., who's sitting
Oh,
there discussing whether people should be vaccinated or not.
yeah,
I mean, you
Yeah.
think that's good, Kenny? You
Not
think that's a
if
no,
good
you're
Is
getting
it
the
idea?
is it
vaccine.
a
no
good thing
kidding.
that we have an educated population and we have PBS and NPR, which again, Jim, did you watch?
No, I'm gonna have to
I
watch
heard
them.
that they were
My
pretty hilarious.
girlfriend Marjorie Taylor Greene was in
Yeah,
full,
yeah.
full regalia today.
Apparently, Elmo is a communist, according to what Representative
I didn't.
Garcia.
Well, Jim Jordan, I'm sure, was also a lot of fun to watch too.
I think the major problem with the Biden administration is they only snuck in 20 million people. If it was 100 million people, he would have had more support.
That's
Well,
not.
hold tight.
Oh,
Now, hold tight. They
now
used to
you're
say,
see. Now you're
they,
doing right wing.
they used to say, well, remember the argument about they snuck them in. When all the people came from Europe in the late 19th century, the same kind of ignorant attitudes were put on to those people coming
Not the
in.
same. It's not the same. It's
What do you mean
different.
not the same?
The
Oh,
same.
it's a
Oh,
different
come on.
skin color, yeah. But
Nope,
there
it's not the
there
same.
weren't illegal
They didn't want
immigrants. There were
Jews here. They didn't want Polacks here. They didn't want Guineas
Exactly.
here. They
They
didn't want
want
Mix here. Come on,
Italians,
man.
Greeks.
What
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
you
Well,
good?
let's talk
Kenny,
about
you grew up
Germany.
in
Oh
New
yeah,
York.
They didn't want you here, Ken. They didn't
all
want
those
to
immigrant
you here.
problems, I
You're
hope,
the
are
wrong.
behind us. You know, I mean, I've had troops in my units that came from all over the place, and I thought
Right.
they were great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really think I ever had any bad troops. I had some that were better than others, but they came from all over the place, you
And
know.
they joined the army.
And
Right.
and they would fight for their country, and they did, and
That's
they
And
right.
died for our country.
Tom, what do you think about
Good
all this
program.
stuff
Good
about
program.
taking African American, Congressional Medal of Honor holders, and
Oh, come on.
replacing the
Oh,
joint
that's
chiefs?
terrible to take it away from them. Oh yeah, just awful.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, they took what Jackie Robinson down. I mean, this is forget about it. These guys are just out to lunch. Go on,
I
Daryl.
understand. I understand.
Is there any way? Is there any way that we could get
Come on.
General Brown?
Finish
Was
the
it
sentence.
C.K. Brown? Right? Is there any way we can get the Air Force General on BAI?
Huh.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I will that be interesting. You mean the guy they just like sacked, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs?
Right, C.K.
Well, that's
Brown.
not a
Right?
bad idea. I mean, hell, the way things are going, you never know what'll happen. I mean, it'd be interesting to
You
get him
know,
on.
you know what his? Did
We've
you
gone
ever
through
see his speech
so
on?
many generals. I don't even know who's in charge of what anymore. It seems
Yeah.
like they're playing musical chairs with these guys.
Well,
Okay, so
anyway,
where is he right now?
I don't know. Good question. I don't know where he is, Daryl. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if he's even on active duty. For all I know, he's retiring.
Who's that?
We're talking about the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of the Air Force
Air
office.
Force.
C.K. Brown.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I believe it's C.K. Brown.
He was
Yeah.
a fighter pilot. He was a fighter pilot.
What was his job?
He was a chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He replaced Miley. Um,
Oh boy.
African
Yeah.
American. And look, the other one that they took down was Ira Hayes. I mean, like I said to myself, fuck
And the
this guy.
woman who
What?
is the what do you call it in the Navy? The chief
Chief of Naval
operations.
Operations. Yeah.
Yeah, they sacked her too. The
Right.
How
CNO.
come no one has put them on the air?
Well, that's an interesting question, Daryl. That's a very, very
That
interesting question.
interesting questions, Jim. What
Now,
you were just talking about
yeah, but right
having
now,
medication and stuff.
yeah.
They gave me an order. I mean, they gave me a discharge that stated that I wasn't able to leave my house, but I got a broken wrist. They had me in a cast. I took the cast off. I took the catheter out. I'm doing self-medication, waiting for visiting nurse
Oh,
service.
you had a
What's
catheter in your
going
head?
on?
That sucks, man. Shit, you got what? Oh,
And
I'm
I've
sorry
got
to
no
hear that, Daryl.
phone service because they they lost the phone in the hospital.
Really? Fuck
And
that.
no, it's deep. I'm telling you, what I'm going through right now is beyond
All
belief.
right. Well, you should have looked, man. You
However,
should not have been shy about this. You should have been telling us this shit a long time ago,
how
Daryl.
can I
Yeah,
tell you
get
if
your
I ain't got a
congressman
phone?
involved in this. Yeah. Get your congressman involved in this one. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Nah, you got to get the council person first.
Mhm.
What I'm hearing is, okay, so let me stay focused. all of this is the result of capitalism. I know that isn't popular, but it all has to do with
Trump's fault.
people failing to speak the same language when they're using their words. If I say to you, Ken,
Yeah.
I have an entitlement to Social Security, your response is what?
Well, there's a qualifications. I was reading up on it the other day. You got to get 40 points. You have to work a certain number of years. Now, you were in the Army. I don't know what other pensions or stuff,
Air Force. He was in the Air Force.
but there's a state you got to work X number of years, make a certain amount of
Go. If you're having trouble, go to the VFW and ask them to help you.
yeah. You
Yeah,
got
go to the VFW. That's their damn job to help you, and they probably can.
because Mike has joined us. I think he should have an option to answer the question we were arguing about a couple of minutes ago. Is the U.S. getting its money's worth from all the money we spent supporting Israel? Did they do something positive for our international goal?
I think
Well,
continuing.
I think Israel, yes. I think Israel, yes, because we know they'll fight. They'll fight for us, and they have fought for us. Some countries I probably wouldn't be so enthusiastic
Oh,
about. The
Michael.
Israelis will fight for us. I've seen them in action. They will put themselves on the line for us. Yeah, I
Okay,
think so.
Mike, come on.
Well, I just wanted to know if, how many people there were named Mike Jankowitz here, because it seems like I'm the last person to.
No. Come on.
What do you want?
I'm going backwards for you.
Rephrase it again.
The U.S. has supplied $310 billion to Israel, over the last 75 years. It's our biggest foreign aid, billions of dollars and so forth. And this came up because with all the cutting they're doing to end foreign aid, they're leaving it alone for Israel. They're continuing, don't touch the money that's going to Israel, keep sending it. So the question is it worth our time and our concern and our finance and our taxpayer dollars to support Israel in the Middle East? What does it really do for our goals in international, not personal goals?
Well, if they didn't do it, we'd have to do it, and
Right,
they can
Thomas.
do it better, and they can do it better.
Thomas, I'm not sure, but I think your name is Thomas.
Right, Thomas Morgan.
Yeah.
So let Mike answer.
I was trying to find out what the question was so I can answer it.
Yeah.
The short answer is, you're saying, is it worth it? Yes, but not because of what it does for us personally.
Right.
We have an obligation to our allies, and at least we're fulfilling one of those obligations, albeit we're fulfilling none of the others. And it's quite rational to keep our allies as allies and friends. And I believe we have a moral and ethical obligation as well. Also, the fact is that Thomas did make a point, which is that the money we're sending to Israel is not exactly disappearing. It's being used for it's supposed to be used for their self-defense, but depends upon how you interpret self-defense. I think it's justified. It's definitely been justified, and it's still justified. The problem I have right now, is especially concerning a development that just happened, which is that there have been protests. I'm sure you've discussed this already in Gaza, but the protests in Gaza against Hamas, which does give an indication that there is, despite the fact that Hamas is a oppressive and repressive regime, there have still been protests, which does show that the entire, at the very least, the entire, and certainly not the entire, and not even the overwhelming majority of people in Gaza support Hamas. I do have a problem with Israel just keep on using brute force. At this point, at the very least, at this point, concerning those demonstrations, they should ease off or find another way to support or at least respond positively to those protests, so that the best way to get rid of Hamas from Gaza obviously is internally. So I'm a little skeptical about Netanyahu's motives, but then again, I'm not a big fan of Netanyahu. But his motives in this latest show of brute force, the resumption of the war, shall we say. And I'm wondering what's going to happen next. I mean, Netanyahu is also facing his own, he may be doing this for his own personal political reasons in holding together his coalition and make sure he, keeps the furthest right-wing elements of his government in there. And if that's the reason he's doing it, there's no excuse for that, obviously. But I think that as far as the aid, we're giving the aid to Israel. We're not giving the aid for a specific policy of the Israeli government. At least that's the impression I get from why we're giving the aid. We're not saying, oh, okay, as long as Israel continues bombing Hamas, we'll give them more money.
We're giving a military aid and weapons that they are using to go into to attack Hamas. We're directly supporting a proxy war.
Well, it's not necessarily a proxy war. I mean, well, I guess we want to. I guess the United
Proxy
States
occupation, whatever you want to call it.
No. I mean, in other words, the United States isn't
How about
officially.
genocide?
Genocide, right?
No, it's not genocide. It could be cultural genocide, but it's not genocide. Genocide is where you have a determined effort to wipe out the entire race, religion, creed, color, etc.
How many children were killed today?
You know something, Daryl? I'm talking about the definition of a word. Nobody's saying that what's right and what's wrong. What I'm saying is,
so when the UN
let me explain. Daryl, wait, let me explain what I'm talking about. If you keep on using words that don't mean what they mean, what they're supposed to mean, that, in other words, you decide, I'm going to redefine genocide, then it diminishes the argument against what is actually being done. Nobody's saying that the deaths of children is a good thing, but is it genocide? Are they actually trying to wipe out, to kill every single Palestinian? And if they were, why is the death rate so low? And I mean so low, meaning 50,000 is quite high, but as far as for genocidal standards, for the standards of genocide, it's incredibly low. If, for instance, you say genocide was committed against Europe's Jews during World War II, and 2/3 of the Jews of Europe were wiped out, well, we haven't seen anywhere near that percentage of the Palestinians wiped out, even though Israel is quite capable of doing it. However, that doesn't mean, just because you can't use the word genocide, that it's right, it's a good thing to do, or anything like that. There are other words that we can use. My problem right now is we're now both the left and the right now, the right's been doing it for a while, is abusing the language to the point where we have no language and we have no communication. And that's a concern to me. And they're just using words to serve a purpose. But what it simply does is waters down the effect for those people who are like on the fence, especially. It just waters down the effect of the argument that you're trying to make. So that's where I'm coming from.
There's another point on this that Jim made the point. He didn't intend to, but he made the point. Half of the people in Jerusalem University, I think it was, half of them are Arab Israelis. So Israel is cooperating to educate Arab Israelis.
Okay,
And
well,
they would give,
Jim,
they used to give
Jim was not
medical
Alex,
treatment
about genocide.
to
Alex.
people from Gaza.
He was making the point that, it's dumb to.
No, he could speak for himself. He could speak for himself. The point is, Israel has done things favorable for the Palestinians and detrimental for the Palestinians. But if you only
Right.
want to talk about one side, you're being prejudiced, Oh, you knocked over this, you stole that, you ate too much, you ate the last piece of pie. Wait a minute, I brought in the money to buy the pie. I built the house. I
Well,
taught
yeah,
people how to do this and how to do that. It was one of the most shocking things. If you want to go for anecdotal stories, there was a woman who got captured as a hostage who was transporting people from Gaza to come to his hospitals in Israel. And she got captured as a hostage.
but who
And
did she get
what she
captured
does,
by, Ken?
he helps
Ken,
Palestinians
who did she get captured by?
by the Hamas.
Right. Now, is Hamas another word for Palestinian?
No, it's a militant group in that area.
Right. And now we have evidence that certainly not even all Palestinians in Gaza support Hamas. So you can't vilify Palestinians, all Palestinians, by what Hamas does.
Right, but you can't. You should take note. You can't vilify all Israelis because of what Netanyahu is doing with the IDF. There's a whole organization called, Jews for Peace. For peace, Jews,
Exactly.
Jews fighting to give the things to Palestinians.
Yeah,
It's
that's exactly
it's
the
silly to
point.
go. Israel's evil. Israel's evil. Israel's evil.
Well, wait. Are they saying, in other words, are people saying the policies of the Israeli government are evil, or Israel is inherently evil?
Depends who they're talking. I don't know. I'm sure you get both.
If you're saying Israel is inherently evil, yeah, that's crap.
Yeah.
But if you're saying that the policies of and I don't even like the term evil,
Right.
okay, but if you're saying that the policies of the Israeli government are bad, if you say Israel bad, just Israel is bad, then again, that's bullshit. But and that's bad in itself. But if you say the policies of the Israeli government are the present policies of the Israeli government, or the policies of the Israeli government towards the Palestinians, that's bad. You're not against you're not against the justifications for the existence of the state of Israel.
Right.
You're not against Israel as an entity, but you're saying I don't like what they're doing with the Palestinians, or I don't like what they're doing with anything that in other words, you disagree. That's not saying Israel is bad. That's not the same thing. I mean,
the same thing applies to the United States. You don't go to the worst prison in the country where there's the most abuse and everybody in there is innocent and say that's America.
No, but the way you could put
it's a bad thing and it should be corrected.
Well, wait a second. But to say I am totally against Trump's policies, I'm totally against everything the Trump administration is doing, doesn't mean you're against the United States.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
however, there are many people in the Trump administration, including the jackass himself, who are okay. That's my little opinion there. Including Trump himself, who are saying that if you don't support Trump, you're against America.
Yeah.
That is
total. A jackass is a highly intelligent animal and it works like very hard.
Okay, I'm sorry to insult jackasses.
There you go.
Okay. But the idea is, yeah, my apologies to jackass.
The jackass.
But the fact is that this kind of thing where you're saying, you don't agree with Trump, you don't agree with policies, you're against the United States. That's bullshit. That's how you destroy a country from within.
Right.
So all of this stuff that's coming out, I can personally say that I can't find. I mean, it's hard for me to find something that Trump has done that I agree with.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is, and not only that, if I may segue, as you did during the discussion, into Social Security. I mean, this is ridiculous. There's 70 million people on Social Security, some form of Social Security. And if he starts fucking with that, what does he hope? I mean, how is that going to hold the United States together?
Right.
I mean, this is a situation where, I mean, we're in a situation in this country. First of all, we're in a situation in the world where it's all moving to the extremes. And as any doctor can tell you, if you worry about the extremes and not the center, the organism will die. Then the whole world seems to be moving, well, most of the world, moving towards the extreme as they can get. And we have an extreme in power in the United States right now. And they keep on going and going. There's no limit. They don't know there's no point where they think they're going too far. And by the time, once it goes
today, by the way.
What? I'm sorry, Darryl?
Go ahead, Daryl. I'm not going to keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
No,
No, my like I started with, if you change the if you change the mental reaction of about 10 people on the planet, all this goes away. Even with vile, evil capitalism that requires slavery in order to operate. My challenge here is beyond my physical challenge here, is trying to understand how, and I'm going to use the word again, genocide, Mike, not because of the numbers, but because of the target. And unless I'm totally deluded or persuaded irrationally by the doctors who keep coming on WBAI talking about children being shot in the head by Israeli soldiers, I just have a problem with that.
okay, Darryl, let me just
Yes,
give
and that 40,000 figure before you go on, it's about a third of the population of Palestinians just in Gaza that have been murdered by the Israeli Defense Force. And the river to the sea game, well, if you take Gaza, which is on the Mediterranean, and you take the West Bank, which is on the Jordan River, they're already from the river to the sea. The challenge is do they have access to the sea to eat from? Do they have electricity that they can use? And why is the denial of water, food, and electricity an allowable medium for the United States to continue to replenish the stockpile of weapons that were stationed in Israel?
Okay, Darryl. First of all, genocide is dependent on intent. Okay, you can't say, because otherwise we were guilty of committing genocide during World War II, and nearly everybody in a war situation, nearly every country in a full-out war is guilty of committing genocide. But genocide is very specific, and it is contingent on intent. So you could say all these children are being killed. That's horrific. But it's not genocide unless they're intending to wipe out the entire population.
Mike, did you hear the last edict from I guess it's the equivalent to the Department of Defense minister. Did you
well,
hear
well, look,
what he said?
Daryl, what, in other words, let's get our definitions correct together. First of all, if you're going to talk about the far right,
You just got DiGiorno classic crust pizza.
I didn't know there were commercials in this thing. Okay. If you're going to talk about the far right, the Israeli far right, you're not going to get me to be sympathetic to it. But the fact is that, wait.
I asked you, did you hear what the man said?
Daryl, what, in other words,
he's a minister. Whether he's far right or not, he has the power to do what he's saying.
But are they doing it? And that's the thing. I don't agree. I do not think the Israeli government right now
is intending. Look at you watch Al Jazeera at least.
Daryl, where is the evidence that they intend? Show me some evidence that there is an intention on the part of the state of Israel to wipe out every Palestinian, to wipe them off the face of the earth. Somebody's got to show me that some sort of evidence, decent evidence, because all I'm hearing is, this is what I think, this is what it looks like to me. And to be quite honest, I find these arguments against Israel, and some of the arguments could be legitimate, but I find them less
WBAI at all?
Start saying going to an extreme.
Do you listen to WBAI at all?
I know too much about WBAI. Let's not get into that. The idea is, I've dealt with WBAI. I not just listened to them. Somebody talked me into running for the local station board.
That's wasn't what I was referring to. I'm trying to figure out where you're getting your information from so that I can ask you a question.
What do you mean where I'm getting my information from? I see no evidence that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians.
So the doctors who come from the United States and
we're getting into a semantic discussion here. It's not genocide. If you're going to tell me, if you're going to ask me, the idea of all these children getting killed, is that good? No. But I can't define it as genocide. I don't think there is. I have not heard.
You disagree with the International Court and the United Nations?
As far as genocide goes, if they said Israel is committing genocide, I disagree.
Okay. That's nice.
So the idea is, they're defining the word obviously different than I am. So if the word has been redefined, somebody's got to tell me that also.
Well, anti-Semitism has been redefined, and no one's particularly kicking about that.
Well, look, I'm getting to a point at this point where people start saying, we're going to redefine this word. Then why don't we just dump the English language out the window, and nobody will speak English? But I have to be able to communicate.
That's been the problem all along.
Well, if that's the problem,
to use the same. Okay. Something as simple as in Ferguson, people talking to one another and saying, "You better stay woke because these cops ain't gonna stop."
Yeah.
And then that then gets redefined as, I don't know what white people call that now. I mean, it's some kind of a disease. You're woke.
So
would you prefer me to be asleep?
Yeah, I go by Ledbetter's definition. I'll go back there. That's the definition I know about. White people, well, put it this way, white racists have now redefined woke. And as far as I'm concerned, they're not talking English. If you start saying woke,
that's to the point where it's commonly used in Congress by people who aren't racist, supposedly.
Supposedly, yeah.
Right?
I don't know.
So, I mean, let me try this a different way since I got to figure out how to get some other things happening.
First of all, you're going through something that I don't think you should be having to go through, and I'm a little concerned about what you're going through. So I just wanted to get that in there as a
Well,
friend.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
However, the way that I got here to the position that I'm in,
Yeah.
many people would call it just a bad series of consequences of circumstance, and I think that it's generally designed to show me what it is to be poor in New York City with its 100 billionaires and its former mayor at $104 billion, and nobody really talking to one another about the individual. So you write a post diagnosis in which the person isn't supposed to be leaving their house, and then you give them a prescription in which they're required to go to the institution to pick up the medication. I'm supposed to be going to a what do you call it? An orthopedist appointment with a uh, in the same packet that they tell me that I'm not supposed to leave the house and visiting nurse service is supposed to come to visit me. And because I lost the phone in the hospital, I got a $1,000 phone bill or $2,000 phone bill now from Verizon. I mean, it's just a whole thing. And what I'm trying to do as I'm coping with what I view as a genocide, when I hear American physicians who uh who have been to Gaza and have seen both the children who survived the headshots and the back shots. And when you constantly hear, you're talking 40,000, the release from the Hamas uh, government is 50,000. And Ralph Nader's saying, well, if you dig up the bodies underneath the rubble, you're coming to 300,000. I'd like to just get an understanding of what happened on October 7th, 20 was it 2023, 2022, and if everyone concluded that the I'll highboil here. The 1,200 people who were killed in Israel, how many of them were raped? How many babies had their heads chopped? Whatever the stories were that Haaretz said and other entities have said didn't happen. And yet it's still being quoted by members of Congress. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that I'm failing to understand, and I think that I listen pretty critically, although I don't listen to Fox, not because I have anything against Fox, it's just that I haven't gotten around to them yet.
Well, don't look, you're going through enough garbage. Don't listen to Fox and make it worse. But the fact is that
Be able to talk to people who do, though.
well, the thing is though, but if you just taking an example, you have doubts as to whether or not babies were shot in the head on October 7th and women were raped. Okay. And until we see hard evidence, until you see hard evidence, you're somewhat dubious. Okay. That's perfectly rational, perfectly logical. On the other hand, though, you're believing what people are saying, what's happening in Gaza about, let's say, 300,000. Just using this as an example. So without
Ralph Nader. That's a Ralph
Ralph
Nader.
Nader isn't hard evidence.
I'm not saying that it is, Mike. I was just attributing the statement to the person whom I heard it from, so that you can then, if you want to refute it, fine. What I'm saying is that whenever I see pictures of Gaza, I see North Korea after the Korean War, in which there were no buildings standing. They run out of targets. What are you supposed to do? Just keep bombing.
It also happened in Nazi Germany during World War II. We were running out of targets against
Against the Germans in Germany. All right. So now here we go again. Show me, why are you continuing to bomb hospitals? I mean, hospital. Come on, man. I don't care who's hiding in the hospital. You don't go shooting up a hospital. You don't sodomize the.
I wouldn't use sodomize either. That has a specific meaning. But you don't blow up a hospital.
No, actually, not only does it have a specific meaning, you see it on the video. Now, what am I supposed to do with that?
I haven't seen any video of
sodomy videos where Palestinian prisoners.
No, I haven't seen those videos. Okay. People have been telling me they're floating around.
I would say I'd send it to you, but what I have to do is I'll have to email you until I get my service back. I'll have to email you.
And by the way, if they're doing that, okay, is that a crime? You bet your ass is. Not your ass.
Yeah, but
the idea is that, and I'm saying that when you listen to the hospital, I mean, things. So I think we can have a better discussion if we throw out the words like, or not use words like genocide and sodomizing Gaza. Obviously, if you're talking about the what's going on to Israeli prisoners, I don't. Again, if I see it, if I see the evidence, that may convince me that
the genocide I'm talking about. I'm sorry, the sodomy that I'm talking about happened in the West Bank.
Right, for the prisoners. So I haven't seen that yet, but if I see it, I'll probably, and not that I want to watch it, that's for sure. But the idea is that if that evidence is there, if there's hard evidence is there, then it happened, and you've got to stop it and get justice for it. I mean, in other words, what's happening, in other words, if you're going to ask me, my personal philosophy is, if you're looking to get one guy and he's in a hospital, you don't blow up the hospital. No. I mean, if they're keeping him in the hospital, he's being kept in the hospital. At the very least, you try to say, okay, or give people ample warning. All right, this one guy is a threat, is an existential, or part of an existential threat to Israel. Everybody get out of that hospital. He might go also, but the fact is, at least you don't have to blow up the hospital. You don't have to blow up everybody in it. So, yeah, if somebody is hiding among civilians, you got to give the civilians a chance to get out. I've never been a fan of the ideas. Like there was one incident in the months ago where they saw two armed Hamas gunmen, two gunmen in among 25 aid workers. Actually, there's more than that. And they said, okay, there are two Hamas gunmen, go after that. And they got the gunmen, they got 25 aid workers also. I mean, to me, that's, I'm sorry, you don't do that. I mean, you're not going to kill, you're not going to get every Hamas gunman. And you don't go after every Hamas gunman, regardless of the collateral casualties. That's just, at the very least, I mean, I can't condone that. But the fact is that I mean that's just heavy-handed. That's why I was saying, and that's why it's still not genocide. But is it wrong? Yeah, I think. And what the point I was trying to make originally is that now that there is evidence, put it this way, it may be a few hundred people, maybe a few thousand, it may be tens of thousands of people in Gaza who are against Hamas, or want Hamas to leave power, give back the hostages, and end this thing. Now that there is that type of uprising, then I think Israel or Netanyahu, the Netanyahu government, maintaining this heavy-handed and heavy-hitting policy of saying, okay, we're just going to keep on bombing them and go after all these guys and everything. I said, wait a second. You've got what you want brewing in Gaza among the Palestinians in Gaza, among the Gazans. Don't keep on killing them. I mean, there must be some way to, somebody up there in the Israeli government, well, there was, but he was fired. But there are people in Israel, in the state of Israel, who are, and I would say, if not a large majority, at least a extremely large minority, but a substantial number of people who are saying, wait a second, if the Gazans themselves are going to get rid of Hamas, which is Hamas's represents an existential or potentially existential threat to Israel, and they want to get rid of them, and they want to give back the hostages, I mean, can we deal with those people? Can we encourage those people? And the way to encourage them is not by killing them or bombing them. So I think this is a turning point here, at least the beginning of a turning point, where the Netanyahu government is going to have to make a decision, which is they're either going to have to say to themselves, all right, there is a way to end this war in Gaza where Israel will get everything it needs and maybe even everything it wants. But, and if they don't end the war, the reasons for it will be obvious, which is that Netanyahu is just trying to keep a coalition together of right wingers, so he could of extremists, so that he can stay in power. But I think those protests in the streets of Gaza, what's left of the streets, but that people are going out there and saying, no, this is too much. Okay, you know, they're not just blaming Israel, they're blaming Hamas as well. I think that's a signal. And I hope that signal is received and dealt with appropriately.
Well, I want to throw something in here that nobody's discussed, and I'm really surprised.
Yeah.
This whole kerfuffle, or I forget people busting each other up, Israel and Hamas, Gaza and the West Bank and all of that. Why isn't there a presence of peace or negotiation or mediation coming from Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all those other little states? This is an Arab situation. I go by this thing. I don't get critical of other people's standards. You know, Arabs, Muslim standards are different. People in New York are different than people in California. So there's different cultural things. I don't want to go into long vibes about that. You know the examples I mean. Just word of mouth things that nobody even puts in writing. Sometimes things are in writing. You know, the Dutch, I forget them, you know, the Amish. They have different standards than Jehovah's Witnesses or Jews, and things are different, different cultural things. This problem is mostly associated with Middle Eastern Muslims, different than Indonesian Muslims, different than Muslims in India, Middle Eastern Muslims. There should be a major effort launched by Saudi Arabia to create peace and civility between the Palestinians and the Jews living in the combined state of Israel. However you want to partition it, or repartition it, or whatever you want to do, bring about a civil arrangement and offer mediation. Why us? Why us? Because we
Point of
lived there.
information.
Why?
Because the British
Absence of
defaulted.
Saudi Arabia.
No.
The
Ken,
British defaulted and we picked it up.
the British
Yeah.
didn't. The British. Let's not go back to 1947. The idea is that the right now Egypt did
Egypt.
come up with Egypt with other states, with other Arab states. So to say that why is nobody else doing it is incorrect. Other countries are trying to come up with a peace plan. They are.
Which ones?
Egypt, well, Egypt for one, it's called the Egyptian plan.
Oh, the Egyptians haven't been able to do much.
Well, but that's not what Ken is asking. Ken is asking
Yeah.
why is nobody else?
I consider it like it's absent.
They
So-
are trying, but there are
Well,
countries.
who if they're Egyptians? Who do you think is supposed to do it? Maybe the UN is supposed to. I don't know.
Nah.
Well, the idea is whoever's doing it, whoever's attempting to do it is attempting to do it. By the way, I just want to say one thing, a little bit off subject, but what Daryl is going through with his medical thing, the catch-22 he's going through, should be not only is it terrible what's happening to Daryl, but it should be a warning to everybody else what this country is heading for. This kind of, we're all going to be in these catch-22 situations with no way out.
Yeah.
And just thought I'd throw that in because what he's going through is atrocious.
You mean in New York City?
He's in New York.
He's in New York City. That's another world.
Oh, okay. So if it's not part of the United States, can we be part of Canada?
Well, it's part of the United States, but it's another world. New York City. Come on, you know that. I know that. You know, we've all been there.
We're still supposedly the United States.
Yeah, I know, and I don't disagree. No, but New York is New York. You know. And,
well, I'm sure if it's happening here, it can happen there and elsewhere.
Well, I think it is. Only maybe we don't recognize it. I think California is in for some rough rides here.
So is Texas. Texas is having some problems also.
Well, Texas always has problems. I've been in Texas too many times. It always has problems.
Right.
You know.
But
name another state. Name another state that doesn't have problems.
Well, yeah.
North Dakota.
Utah may be one of the more stable states. Utah might be. You know. I think the Mormons have done a pretty good job.
No, Utah's got its problems too.
Well, I'm sure they do. Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Everybody's got the problems here, but we're getting to a situation. I mean, we're just going to have to start. Now, this is going to sound, I hate touchy-feely stuff, but I'm going to have to say this anyway. We're going to have to start getting to a situation where we start caring, in other words, yeah, we've all got problems that we got to deal with, but we also got to care about each other, at least to some degree, and try to find a way out of this.
With the current administration the way it is, we won't.
I know.
I know. I think what you said is true. We should, but with the current administration, we will not.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's
So let's have a party.
Let's draft all those bastards and put them out on the desert doing close order drill. That'd straighten a lot of them out of it, you know. And of course, Trump was the biggest draft dodger of them all. They should have thrown his ass
Every
out
game
in
is
the
a new
desert, made him dig
car
a
taught
few
me just that.
foxholes. What?
no, it's another one. It's another unannounced commercial. Go ahead.
You know, if he'd ever heard a shot fired at him in anger, right, because he didn't hear the one that didn't hit him, you know, I don't know what the hell he'd do.
No, no, he's not what I would call good soldier material. But the idea is that, yeah, you're right. I mean, this whole people are believing their own realities. People are creating their own realities. My personal thing is that computers may have a lot to do with it, because I know people. I mean, I know of people, because I haven't seen them in a while, who are just living online.
Oh
That's
no,
it.
I believe that. Oh yes, yeah, for
So
sure.
you're right. A couple of close order drills, you can't do that online.
No, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we're in a
I
mess.
know. I hate to say it, but maybe we ought to get involved in another big overseas fracas someplace. I hate to say that, but you know, maybe we should. You know.
How about
It'll wake
mental illness? How about mental health for everyone?
good one. That would be good, because we certainly seem to have a epidemic of, shall we say, mental unhealth going on. By the way, there is a theory, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but there's a theory that the COVID epidemic, and this sounds a little far-fetched, but that COVID hit a lot more people, a lot harder than they think it did mentally. And some people who were close to going over the edge went over the edge. So
No, I could see that. Oh yes, You know, I've got friends that are still suffering from COVID. I thought it was over, but apparently it isn't.
no, it's not over. Yeah, it's toned down a bit, but yeah. So this
Were you
long
vaccinated,
were they
Tom?
vaccinated?
Yeah.
Were you vaccinated?
Yes, of course. I'm used to taking
No.
shots.
Well,
I've taken more shots myself than all four of you guys have taken put together.
Probably, yeah.
I
They've
haven't
stuck
taken
they've
any.
stuck needles in every part of my goddamn body. You know.
Well, that I've had, but
You
I
know,
haven't. I wasn't
that's just the way it
vaccinated.
is.
What I'm
You know.
saying to you is, if there's a small part of the population in which the vaccine failed to, if the vaccine malfunctioned in the process of uh after 3 days, 72 hours, it was supposed to stop instigating the productions of the spike protein, uh, and it got out of the deltoid muscle of the arm that it was shot into, got into.
Didn't you get your shots of the ass?
No,
Oh, well, you lucked out. You need to get them in your ass.
no, the
You need
only
to get
shot
him
I
in
ever
your
got.
ass. Well, there's a corpsman on either side of you jabbing you in the arm, and he's telling you to bend over so he can give you the big one in the butt. You know, you haven't lived.
I did receive Thorazine shot in my ass when I was taken to a mental facility someplace in the Midwest. I'm unclear as to where. And the guy wanted to give me Thorazine. I said, I don't need it. There's no problem. He said, look, you either take the pill or was shooting you with it. And
Well,
I said, what do you mean? He
we
said,
took
oh,
our
so you
shots
want the shot,
for
right?
a much more common reason. That was so we wouldn't get VD. You know, that's what we took the shots for.
No,
You know, I
you're
mean, it was a
talking
more
about, yeah.
practical deal. You know.
Well, I'm talking about a situation in which I was hijacked from where I was to someplace else, and I
Yeah,
ended up in North Dakota.
yeah.
Not North Dakota. Where the hell did I? I was transported from. I was at Udon Air Base. Went to the Philippines for a psychiatric evaluation. And from the Philippines, after 2 weeks in the Philippines, they sent me back to.
Udorn, you said you were in Thailand?
Yeah, I was in
Yeah.
Udon.
Well, everything I've heard about that was a pretty good place, you know?
It was.
Yeah, yeah. They weren't
And
shooting at you over there, you know, too much, maybe a little bit, but not very much.
oh no, no, nothing compared to what you experienced. Uh, I don't think that there was even a breach. There wasn't even a breach of the when I was in Karat. Well, okay, forget that. So I went through a psychiatric cycle and ended up in when I was released from Wright Patterson,
Mm-hmm.
I was sent up to K.I. Sawyer, which is in northern Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, most of the SAC people get. I mean, we were doing air defense
Mm-hmm.
102s.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why I'm telling you this. And then
Well,
I
I
ended
don't
up
know. It,
going
it it
back
makes a
to
good story. It makes a good story. That's why,
I
you
ended
know.
up going back to Thailand, but this time to Korat, which is in the center of the country,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
right?
I have two West Point classmates from Thailand. They're not alive anymore, but you know, I mean, they were great guys. And if you ever went to
Wow.
Thailand and looked them up, they could do wonderful things for you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah.
Well, anyway, point of the story is that I survived the first psychiatric encounter, turned down a pension, and went back to Thailand, and got back to Thailand. Uh, what was I released to? I'm missing a base here somewhere. But I
Well,
ended up.
did they take pretty good care of you in Thailand? I assume maybe they did. I hope so.
Thailand was great
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
for
Well, I
me.
remember
Wasn't too
Thailand
great
as
for the
being
Thai.
wonderful.
It definitely
Yeah.
wasn't great for the Laotians.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. 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 I went to Laos when I wasn't supposed to, but anyway, still, I've been to Laos. Yeah.
as a civilian or as a military?
There's a military. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Well, we slipped across the border every once in a while and gave them a good drubbing, so to try to keep them at bay, you know. Most
well,
of the time, we were just
not the
concerned with.
Laotians. You were trying to get the North Vietnamese, right?
Yeah, but you know, we tried to keep the Laotians away so we could give the Thailand. No, the other way around. We tried to so we could give the North Vietnamese a good drubbing. Yeah,
Right.
and we did. We gave them a hell of a drubbing. You better believe it. I've been there. I've been there several times since, and they don't hate us for that either. I'm surprised. We killed a lot of them. Yeah, we
Isn't
did.
Vietnam one of the greatest promoters of United States trade?
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, but
I wish I could have caught Aaron when he was here because
yeah.
he was laying it out. The problem is that United States population fails to understand what the benefits and responsibilities that the United States took on in order to create the society that the world is trading in. And unless we understand trade and
Hold it a
trade,
minute. Wait a minute. Darrell, do you think it's appropriate to talk about the entire population? This is a country of immigrants. You will find for every individual's opinion, you're going to find five other people who have different opinions or opposite opinions. Not everybody is in accord on anything. There are different people who have
right?
different opinions on everything. So you can't say Americans think this, Americans like apple pie.
When I
Some
first came on and asked to talk about personalities,
I would say not talk about personalities, talk about population, but don't say the whole country has one personality. That's what I'm saying. You're trying to identify Americans. They wear cowboy hats and they like to chew gum. You know, some of them do, and some of them like to do Armenian dances, and some of them are Eskimos, and some of them are
if I
gay.
gave you that impression, Ken, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about government.
Well, government varies in this country too. There's 50 states. There's three parts of government. There are Democrats, Republicans, Greenpeace, or you know, the Green Movement, independents, libertarians. There's all kinds of theologies of governance methods. There's people. Oh, what's the guy's name? He's on KPFK all the time. He's really into co-ops. You know, he thinks the answer to everything is co-ops. He talks about this famous co-op in Spain. So you have
Richard
different
Wolff.
people with different ideas and different theories.
Richard Wolff.
Yeah, Richard Wolff, right. So, you know, he's got his shtick, and Bernie's got his shtick, and FDR, and you know, the Bush brothers, I mean Bush father and son, and you know, I think it's interesting to talk about. We have an imperial factor here where we have a hierarchy or heritage families, political families like the Clintons or the Bushes or the, you know, now the Trumps, probably his son will run for something, you know, and it's very popular and you know, husband and the wife get positions, you know. So it's a whole story and it's a whole thing and it's a variation. It's a collection of mishmash. And one of the things that's interesting is how can we mostly get along without killing each other? Now, if you go out for a ride in your car, you'll know that you're going 40 miles an hour this way, and the guy's coming 40 miles an hour the other way. And that's for the whole trip you're doing that. And fortunately, nobody starts chewing gum or looking down and causes an accident. You don't have an accident every 2 minutes. So there is coordination in society where people get along with different viewpoints. And there isn't one answer for the whole society. And it's also because the factor of the where you live, the economy, the ecology, whether four seasons, one season, more men than women, more women than men. You know, people die younger, people live longer, people eat fish, people eat steak, people are vegetarians. There's a variety. It's a big, complex thing. It doesn't all fit together. But one of the things I notice here from talking just to Thomas and some other people, if you have a system that is larger than you but allows you to function, where you have a known game, you have known obstacles, dictated, you know, rules or things that you can maybe break or not break, but you have to do this. Aaron Perez is also military background. He said 5 years and then 15 years in reserves. And Thomas had spent his whole life in the military in various places, and a lot of associates and are associated with it too. And like Aaron said, he's got a godson who's going to go to West Point or Annapolis. So they have that. And I've met people who belong to or born again Christians, and they have it all worked out, and they do things, miraculous things, motivated to do it for the glory of the Lord. That's why they got their 5 kids to become senators or lawyers or doctors, because they did it for Jesus. So they're motivated. And you could be the same way in the military. If you do an honest day's work, chances are you're going to get rewarded for it appropriately. It's going to work. Some people, it may not work because you got to be willing to be controlled. You got to control things. You're going to get an obligation. You're going to be given an assignment where you have to control other people or things, but you also have to give in to being controlled to a set of rules or conventions and so forth, like in a marriage. Depends on who you're married to, but you may have to be polite to your mother-in-law. You may have to go to certain holiday events that you're not interested in going to, but you do it to keep the peace. So you cooperate with the environment and the society you live in. And I find it interesting. And I was just going to ask Thomas, and I can ask you too, Darrell, because you were in the military. I wasn't, but I've been parts of organizations and different philosophies. But the thing is, what would you say, Thomas, that the average person who's a career military person, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, even the Marines or the Coast Guard,
Mhm.
what percentage of those people would consider they've had a successful life?
Well,
Most of them,
that's a good question. Of course, if they had rank, if they made rank, they had a successful career. If they didn't have rank and got discharged for some reason, and of course we've all known those cases. So it was kind of come see, come saw, If you got with the program and did what they want you to do, you'd probably have a pretty good career. And if you fought the problem, that was not good. It was not good for you, if you fought the problem. But I was thinking about the Vietnamese people. I just love the Vietnamese people,
yeah.
and but especially I love the Montagnards. The Montagnards were the hill people. The Montagnards were the blacks, if you want to compare them. The Vietnamese thought they were one, and the Montagnards were the blacks. And I had a Montagnard platoon that the CIA paid me. I paid these guys, and they were my guys, and they knew exactly where their money came from, and they were very nice to me.
How
And
do you
they
spell
saved
that?
my
How do you
ass I
spell
don't know
that?
how many times,
Spell that. Boatyards?
They were Montagnards. They were the hill people. They were people that
Okay.
came in from the hills. You could equate them to blacks in the U.S. years
Yeah, I
ago.
understand.
They were
Class
part of
structure.
society, but they were not the best part of society.
Right. They
And
got
I thought they were wonderful people. You could trust them. You could tell them things. And I'll tell you, if you got on their good side, there wasn't anything they wouldn't do for you. You just had to be a little careful, not ask them to do too much.
ah,
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah. They were wonderful.
sounds like a great experience.
Yeah, it was
And I've never
wonderful.
even heard of them. I mean, is that something you could talk about or write a book about? The
Oh, I would
Montagnards
write a
in
book.
Vietnam?
I can talk about it. They came out of the hill, and the Vietnamese and the French used them for things, and maybe didn't always treat them too right. Well, we come rolling in there, and we want things done. We want people to help us. And I used to get several $100,000 piastres every month to pay them, and I paid them, and they came from me. And I didn't cheat them. The French would cheat them, would take their percentage. I never cheated them. I gave them everything, and I got them more. And they appreciated that, and they saved my ass several times. You better believe it.
And they were
And
used for construction or agriculture or cleaning, housing, anything?
they were
Chauffeurs?
fighters. I hired them as soldiers. We went out and killed people.
Soldiers?
Yeah, we
Soldiers?
went out and killed people.
Oh, come on, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Did they have an animosity towards North Vietnamese?
Mm,
Or were
maybe
they like
some.
mercenaries?
Well, because the Montagnards existed throughout the country. The French used them too up north. Yeah. No, they just knew who paid them. I paid them. They worked for me, and that was the allegiance. And they all had families. And when you got a Montagnard soldier, you got a young wife, and they just had kids until they couldn't have them anymore. That's just the way it went. And my team medic, we took care of them. You know.
Wow.
We took care of them, made sure
Took
they
care of the
stayed
family,
reasonably
too.
healthy. Yeah. And
I just, this is,
I used to hold sick call for them, and I took my team medic down there. We gave them shots, and we, did this and that. And
well, just isn't our boy. I got to ask this. Did they ever do tunnel duty?
do what?
Tunnels. That you keep hearing about soldiers who had to become experts in going into the tunnels to get the
No, they didn't. The Vietnamese did. The Vietnamese were fighting us, and they dug tunnels in Cu Chi. The
yeah.
tunnels of Cu Chi are famous, but by and large, no.
No. Okay.
No, they didn't. No, I had a camp for them. I built them a camp, and I made sure they got their food, and I made sure they got their pay. I went down and paid them every month, and they took care of me. And if
You had
anything
to,
ever happened to me, that was bad news. They didn't want that to happen.
did you have to
And
put them through a boot camp to learn how to use the weapons and
no,
stuff?
no, they knew how. The French had trained many of them.
Oh,
Maybe a little, a little something, but they adapted very well. I could put a platoon of a company of them in a helicopter and go charging off in the jungle, and I didn't have to worry about them. They knew what to do. Yeah,
did any of them come back stateside to become citizens?
no,
No.
probably not.
Yeah,
Probably not. No,
Tom,
probably not.
Tom,
Yeah, well, they were from
Tom,
there. They didn't speak English. I spoke a combination of French and Pidgin English to them. They didn't, and
Tom.
they wouldn't have done well in this country. Although
Okay.
some of them have come over. I've got a guy that takes care of my lawn here that looks to me like he's moating yard, but he speaks English. He's been here for years.
So there wasn't a big immigration like from the Philippine, there was
Oh
people who worked for the U.S. Army.
no.
Okay.
No,
Ken,
not like that. No,
Let's say Daryl has
I really liked the Moton Yards. The hill people. I really liked them. They were
Daryl wants
maybe a
to
little bit simple in their ways, but I really liked them. And when I told them something, I knew they'd do it, and they didn't ask too
Daryl
many
wants to ask you a
questions.
question. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah.
there's some there were Montagnards who immigrated, and there was a group that ended up on Valentine Avenue off of Grand Concourse
What city is that?
in New York City.
Yeah. Well, no, I can imagine that. Sure, I can imagine that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm
Well,
talking to Ken.
some guys married him, and brought him home, and one thing or another. Yeah.
No, this was a population that was fortunate enough to get evacuated out
Yeah.
and
Okay. Yeah, we took some
ended
out.
up
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
in in uh in either the 170s, uh around 170th Street, or 180th Street, 180th Street. Ken, do you know where I'm talking about?
Well, Queens is Queens, wherever.
I mean, where the Vietnamese
No,
were, where they
I'm
went.
talking about the Bronx.
Bronx is even worse. No, I just know
Well,
Manhattan.
I suppose some that came to the United States went where they could get jobs. I suppose.
So they
I mean,
were
when
like,
they left country, I lost track of them.
Came to the United States
they
because
mostly
they
had an
didn't want
ethic
to live.
they had a good work ethic. It sounds
They
like.
didn't
Yeah,
want.
I thought they did. Yeah, I could trust them. And I couldn't always trust the Vietnamese.
Huh.
But I could trust these guys. I did trust them. I'm here. I'm here to tell you I trusted them. If I hadn't trusted them, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a good
Oh
story.
yeah, it was funny. I had a team medic. I was in special forces. We go down and hold sick call every month. That was a kick in the ass. I'll tell you, because nobody the regular Vietnamese treated them like we treated the slaves in our country. They didn't treat them very well. So, many of them had dental problems and all kinds of things. The little kids grew up and they had problems. I used to take my team medic down there and run sick call, and get them all squared away. and they liked that. And it was a rewarding experience, and they were grateful, and they saved my ass. You better believe it. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. They reciprocated, and they saved my ass. Yeah. So that was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
How did you spell the name of the name you're giving him? Boatman?
Montagnard. It's a French name.
Oh,
Montagnard, mountain people. They were mountain people. And they'd come
Tom,
in from probably Laos.
oh, I got it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
They were not necessarily that endemic to Vietnam, South Vietnam, but they were Southeast Asians. Yeah.
they're in Laos.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet any of the pilots, the T-28 pilots?
Well, the American pilots, of course.
No, I'm talking Montagnard pilots.
I don't think we trained too many pilots. Air America was how we flew. Air America was the airlines the CIA paid for.
Right.
And they were regular pilots. Yeah.
I'm talking about these
Apologize,
guys
guys.
trained
It looks like and sounds like
they were trained by Air Force personnel out of
Well, the
out
Air
of
Force probably did train some people. I'm not aware they taught them how to fly, but maybe they could have. I don't.
T-28.
I kind of doubt flying. I don't think we taught too many of them how to fly. Yeah.
T-28.
Well, that was an Air Force plane. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway.
Yeah. I flew mostly in helicopters. You can't land a T-28 just any place. You can land a helicopter any place.
Right. Were you
Yeah.
in the Keys or
Yeah.
or
Yeah, I really thought I really liked them, and after a while, I think they kind of liked me too,
were you
because I'd come down and I'd pay them and I'd bring a medic down and we'd have a little fete and we'd have a little party and
Tom, what kind
I'd
of
buy them
helicopter
several
were you
gallons
in?
of booze so they could have a little fete, and they thought that was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Tom, what kind of helicopters were you using?
Hueys,
Okay.
HU-1H, regular Hueys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some bigger ones. There were some bigger ones too, but mostly Hueys. Yeah, yeah.
Many feet.
That's an incredible story. I love that. I wonder how much of the rest of World War II or not the Vietnam War, that's one country, but how much that U.S. military recruited local populations. Because that's a population.
We had as many as 50 special forces teams in country, and
Wow.
they all had some to do things for them. I had a group that did for me, and and other people had them that did for them. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if they did that in Guam or in
Well, no, because Guam was a U.S. possession. Is a
okay,
U.S. possession.
yeah, but
They didn't do it in Guam.
like in Africa, like in Australia, you got Aborigines. It's British,
Yeah.
but you got
Well, the
Aborigines.
Montagnards were like the Aborigines.
Right. So they
were like that. Yeah.
Okay, so it could be a thing like that in Guam or Midland. I don't know.
Well, I don't know about Guam. Guam's been pretty much Americanized. We're doing a lot of things out in Guam. We're putting big missile defenses out there.
Boy, what a story! Wow, I've never seen a movie about it or anything.
About what?
What you're talking about? These guys who work for you.
Well, maybe not. We always perpetuated the white people. Made heroes out of them. And a lot of the Vietnamese people, just when we left, they.
Well, I'm going to mention a movie that was pointed that out that you probably saw because it was in your genre. Gunga Din. Remember that movie?
Yeah, but that was India.
I know.
That was the Brits in India. No, but you're right. Similar.
Guy, that Indian recruit, he was a water boy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the British never trusted those people to fight. They did the fighting. Those people did all the dirty work.
Yeah.
My guys fought. They saved my ass, because it was just me and my sergeant, and they saved my ass. you
Well,
know.
with the casualties
Oh yeah. Oh,
amongst that group.
sometimes, yeah. That's why I had a medic take care of them. You know, I had a team medics, I had a special forces medic that took care of them. Yeah. Oh yeah. That they liked that. You know, they liked having somebody take care of them. And I was happy to do it. You know. Yeah. Yeah. God, I had a team medic that could birth animals and he could birth people. I've seen him do
Wow.
both. The only thing I didn't let him do was amputations.
Uh-huh.
Well, we sent, amputations. We sent them to Saigon. If somebody had to be amputated on, usually, you know.
Complications.
Well, you don't want to do that out in the jungle.
Oh,
You
that
can,
too.
if you have problems, then they're hard to solve. You know. Yeah. Yeah.
Boy, that's interesting. I know there's a big history of during not the Civil War, but the Revolutionary War,
Hmm.
British and Americans,
Yeah.
uh, Native Americans, for as mercenaries or a part of a fight, you know, and they would reward them with the territory that they would win from some other tribe. It's like,
Well, the Americans supported some of the Indians, and the British supported some of the Indians
right,
in our country.
and the French,
And yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting. I guess
And of
also,
course, anybody that's related to them, that's been so many years ago. You wouldn't recognize them on the street now. They're just
that's
regular
right.
people. Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
a story like that, and Mexico recruited a bunch of people from Ireland to fight against the Mexican American War. So, but this is
Well,
a story in there.
the army recruited a lot of people from Ireland, to
Oh,
go fight. Yeah, oh yeah, in the West. Yeah, it's romantic, but Custer supposedly had a lot of Irishmen. They've made stories about some of them.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Well, that's a
but I'll
great,
tell you, I had an Irish first sergeant in the States, and you haven't lived until you have an Irish first sergeant.
an
This
Irish
this
what?
first sergeant.
Okay.
He was in charge of the troops. I was the commander, but he was in charge of the troops. You haven't lived until you've had an Irish first sergeant. You know, he would call me Colonel Darling. I mean, he'd say all kinds of bullshit things to me, and I ate it up with a spoon. You better believe it. I thought he was wonderful. And he kept everybody in line. He kept everything straight. And so I could drink coffee and go to the officers club and get drunk, and I did. It was almost like a colonial army, almost, not quite. But you see, that was the drafted army, and the army now is not like that at all because we don't draft.
You think it's better?
Well,
You got
I
a
don't know.
viewpoint on it? You don't know? You don't want to
I,
say.
I don't know. When we drafted, the guys only came in for the period of service, and most of them got out. Now, if they come in, if they want to stay, they can. Well, they can always stay, but most young men come in, and then they move on. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. Well, there's some people say the draft will make the population much more isolated, like don't want to get involved in wars because I don't want my kid dying in a ditch somewhere. So because of the draft. So the draft makes the population more concerned about political issues, of
Well, I
especially.
think that's true. I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't. But during the draft, we had World War One, World War Two, the Korea,
Korean War, you know, right up until the
Vietnam.
present day. Yeah.
Well, very
And
little war now after Vietnam. That was it.
yeah.
There's
So
nothing.
it's
Oh, Panama and Grenada.
well,
That's it.
I was
That's
stationed in Panama for 4 years. That was just a good assignment.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, there was a military action there to get in there,
Oh yeah, we had a brigade down there to guard the
and the
canal.
same
Oh
thing
yeah,
with Grenada, and but that's
yeah.
it. For you,
No, don't get me started on Grenada.
yeah,
Because that was a foobar of the first order. That 82nd Airborne Division did that,
yeah.
and they screwed that one to the wall. They
It
screwed the willy out of it. But of course, there really wasn't anybody down there anyway to fight, so it didn't really make much difference.
was just they need to know- they got to you got to send them on a real mission once in a while to shake out
Yeah,
problems,
yeah,
see
yeah,
what doesn't work.
yeah.
Policewood made
Well,
a movie about it.
I knew the commander of the 82nd, and he told me what it was like. He told me
Yeah.
they got screwed up, and he took a lot of the blame himself.
What am I talking about? So ridiculous. We had Iraq twice
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in Afghanistan.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's where the experience in the army comes from now. The guys that were there.
Oh, that big movie. The shop, the helicopter got down. Oh,
Oh, shot down in
something
the
down.
in the
Yeah,
Black Hawk Down or something.
yeah. That's
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess that really happened. I
that's a
guess. Yeah.
war. Yeah.
That wasn't Iraq. Guys, I'm going to interrupt but I just want to say one thing because I've got to go.
Yeah. We're going to end that right after you say it. Go ahead.
But I got to say, Thomas and Daryl, but you guys, Thomas, I was just listening to all your stuff. You've got to write this stuff down.
Yeah.
You really
Well,
do.
I've written some of it down.
I could send you a transcript.
Right?
Well, I've just I've written some of it down. Articles and things like that. But,
Yeah.
but a lot of people write a lot of stuff about it.
Well, it's
And,
still it's historical document. Whether it becomes you write it into a bestseller or whether it sits in a
Well, it wouldn't be a bestseller. Like one of the things that I always remember was I discovered Hamburger Hill in Vietnam, and most people would say, "Well, what's Hamburger Hill?" Well, it was a big battle,
What do you
Yeah.
mean you
and
discovered it? What are you taking credit for? What do you mean?
well, I mean,
Hamburger Hill was a
I can
battle.
write about Hamburger Hill because I was there. I discovered it. I'm flying around in my helicopter, and they took a shot at me. And so we committed a whole brigade. We fired 21,000 rounds of artillery over a 10-day battle over this place. And but it was just one of probably at least half a dozen like that were big battles.
Actually, I have there's a friend of mine, and I don't know if Ken knows him, but Jim certainly does, and a lot of us from the New York Military Affairs Symposium. Our friend Alan Wahlberg, who was never forgets to remind us he was on Hamburger Hill.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hamburger Hill was something else. Yeah.
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 Battle.
Yeah. Yeah. A guy by the name of Weldon
Your
commanded
best
the
bet, Tom, would be to get a ghostwriter.
what?
You need a ghostwriter. You don't need to write it yourself. Just talk to
Well,
someone.
no, I've written Hamburger Hill up, but it's just an article. It's just an article. I've written it up, and
But you should
we
write your
recorded it.
whole. You should
And
write your whole story. Both
it
of you.
lasted for 10 days. We took Hamburger Hill. The guy that commanded the regiment that took it went back to the AUSA convention in the United States as the hero of the moment, and the troops went all out to Eagle Beach and stayed drunk for a week.
How did it get that name?
What?
How did it get that name?
Well, it's because it lasted so long and it was so bloody, and Hamburger Hill, I didn't name it, somebody else did.
I believe it was in both the Ken Burns
Yeah, it's been written up, and they
documentary
made a movie about
Vietnam,
it too. They
and
made a movie
also it
about
had
it.
a
Yeah,
separate movie.
yeah, they made a movie about it. Yeah, so it was interesting, and
Well, I just want to say, I
Totally.
think you should write your story, both of you. but write them as a memoir,
Yeah.
your story, what you saw, all of it. Because you can write a couple of articles, but to see it as a whole, to read it as a whole, would be important. It would be an important contribution to history.
Well, you're right, and that's difficult to do. You know, I can write about a battle, but
Right.
to put it all together in a book, you know, that's not easy. You know, that's not easy to do. You know,
No, but
and
Daryl's right. You can get a ghostwriter, or if not a ghostwriter, somebody assisting you.
yeah, and you know, and another thing I remember was the Bob Hope show when he came over. You know,
Yeah.
what a great event that was. He came over with, what was that gal that was with him?
And
I
Margaret.
forget. I forget her name now. She was really a hot gal. She appeared with him on it, and yeah, and went to that show, and of course they toured the whole country. Anne Margaret, remember Anne Margaret?
One of my favorites. And Margaret was a doll. Yeah.
Anne Margaret was a real trooper.
Yeah.
And she came over with Bob Hope and this group, and they started down in the Delta and they worked up north. I was up north, and so they got organized down there. And Anne Margaret, my unit provided an escort officer for her, and she really liked this guy. You know, he was a young captain, and she really liked him. So they're down in the Delta getting ready to go, and they had these two big ships, Navy hospital ships that they turned into barracks, floating barracks, because the Delta was pretty wet. And so they assigned rooms to everybody, and they assigned Bob Hope and Humma and Anne Margaret Humma. And Anne Margaret then asked the question, well, where is Captain, and I forget his name, where is Captain so-and-so going to be? And they said, oh, well, we don't worry about him. We'll take care of him. And she says, wait a minute. He has got to be right next to me or I can't perform. And he bumped an admiral. He bumped an admiral out of this goddamn boat to give Anne Margaret a cabin. And she was worth it. She was worth it. She was a fantastic entertainer. And got along with this guy pretty well too, I think.
And she was gorgeous. Absolutely stunningly gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bob Hope was always good. You know, he was always good, you know.
And funny. But I can't encourage you because I gotta fly here, no pun intended. But I can't encourage you to get this thing down on paper, out there, available, because it's important. When you got time.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the only person that's written about Vietnam, you know.
Yeah, but your stories are unique to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
well, I've written short articles about some of it, you know. Yeah. I know what you mean.
And if you turn it into a one-man show, I'll even perform it for you. Anyway, I think you could do that yourself.
Where do you live?
Yeah, no, I think you prefer to do it yourself. Don't worry.
Where do you live? Where are you coming in from?
Queens, New York.
Oh yeah, well I'm here in outside of Tacoma, Washington.
Boy, you're the lucky one. Between the two of us, you're the luckier one.
Well, we kind of like it out here, you know. And, yeah.
I was in Tacoma, Washington once, and I would be willing to do it 200 times more. It was a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And a little rainy, but
yeah, you're right. You're right about that. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter when you write. Whatever you're writing, it could be done cross country or whatever. Just put it this way, I'll tout it. You write it, I'll tell everybody to read it.
Okay.
I gotta fly off here because the place is closing at midnight. So I will see you guys next week.
Okay, well, looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading your book. And yours
It's
too,
always
Daryl.
fun to talk about these things because there's a special forces group here at Fort Lewis I belong to, and we get together on Saturday morning and we tell each other outrageous war stories, like I've done, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. It's interesting,
As long as they're true. All right. Take care, guys. I'll see you later.
You do the same, yeah.
The God of Abraham, for sure.
Okay.
Good night.
Well, Mike.
Go back to sleep.
Too.
Have a good
You too.
night. Have a good dream.
Bye.
May all your dreams come true and in the dream.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not all of them.
Or at a rate which is acceptable, not too
Which
fast.
is a rate accessible to your age.
That's right.
Okay. Okay.
Get how to do it, just look it up on Google.
Okay. We'll
Whatever.
see you later.